All right.
We're
Hello,
live.
everyone.
Sweet.
See if I could see anybody in the comments. Or I think my comments are showing. So if anyone shows up, I think they'll show up there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool. Yeah, we got some people here.
great.
Pop out.
Yeah. So thank you, Alan, for joining me today. I wanted to invite Alan because, well, for a couple of reasons. One, obviously, this is I wanted to find a way to answer the questions that I received, and I thought it would be fun to have Alan on as a guest to talk over the questions with me, because that's a little more fun than just me answering the questions by myself. And plus, I also wanted to invite Alan because Alan is a very special booktuber to me personally, because I would not have a channel if it weren't for Alan. I've said that to you before many times, but it's true. Before I found Alan's channel, which was thanks to Jessie May. So I guess I have to thank Jessie May too for that.
I thank Jesse all the time.
Yeah, because Jessie shouted out your channel. And I'm new to live stream, so I apologize. Let's see. Oh, here we go. So there's,
See?
that's how things work. Hi. And so, yeah. So anyway, I wanted to make sure that I invited Alan because, like I said, I wouldn't have a channel if it weren't for him. Before I found Alan's channel, thanks to Jessie, I was more of a lurker in the comment section. And once I found Alan's channel, I don't normally do this, but I actually, when I found your channel, Alan, I started watching all of your videos. As soon as I saw your first video, I thought, who's this guy? This person is amazing. And so I started looking back at all your videos, and I just thought you were so entertaining.
I appreciate that.
So then I started commenting on Alan's channel, and the next thing I knew, he commented back. And I think that just made me feel like, oh, wow, maybe people actually would like read my comments if I commented.
Heck yeah. How long ago did you start your channel? Because I know for a while you were just, involved in the community, but didn't actually have a channel. When did you start it?
So I didn't start it until January,
Oh,
but I've been watching BookTube for probably since 2019,
nice.
maybe. I think the way I found out about BookTube was probably through Daniel Green, and I think it was because of the Game of Thrones TV show.
Yeah.
So I was looking up something about that, and I found his channel through that. He was reviewing like season 8 or something. Yeah. And I was surprised to see there were videos related to the books and things like that. So I think that just kind of, led me down a rabbit hole, as it does for most of us once we find out that BookTube exists.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. And so let's see. I also want to go ahead and mention too, I did do an assumptions video because I announced both the Q&A and assumptions. And hey, Christy. Yeah. So I already posted that video, and I just want to say really quickly, because I haven't referred to that assumptions video since I did it, but I was really surprised how surprised certain people were about assumptions about me. So like, actually, I would like to know, for those of you who are watching, Alan, do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have a younger brother.
Oh shoot! I was going to ask you not to say which order they were in.
Oh, sorry. I have a younger brother and an older stepbrother.
Oh, okay.
Someone actually asked that so when I hit 5K, I was like, I'm gonna do an assumptions video, and people put assumptions out, and I haven't filmed that yet.
You should.
I'm hoping to later today. It's just the month of September was just so flippin' busy with how much I had to do, and that video just takes a long time to film and edit. Same thing with any history video I'm trying to put out. I was just trying to get through September. So hopefully this month is a little easier. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited because I thought my assumption was pretty dead on, the assumption I gave you. But I was surprised though, because you'll see it. But I was surprised though, because one of the assumptions about me was somebody assumed that I was the oldest child in my family.
Are you?
And that's not true. I'm the youngest of 4. Oh, wow. And I didn't think that would be such a big deal. But I got like, I don't know, I don't get like a ton of comments, but I did get quite a handful of comments of people saying, I would have sworn you're the oldest child.
Yeah, you give off oldest sibling vibes. I can see that for
Wow.
sure. For
That's
sure.
interesting.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I told that to my husband. I said, yeah, everyone thinks I come across like the oldest sibling. And he scoffed. He's like, I could tell you're the youngest. I guess I don't to him. To him, I definitely seem like the youngest, but he's
Yeah.
also the oldest sibling too.
Yeah.
So
My younger
maybe.
brother is younger brother's an engineer and has 3 children.
Whoa.
The oldest of which is, how old's Scotty? Christina, 12? 12. He just turned 12.
Oh.
So, and he's 3 years younger than I am. So he's 30. How old am I? 39? He's 36. He's
Oh,
36.
yeah.
So, but other than that, like we have completely different, like he's completely STEM and I'm completely other direction, but we like the exact same things as far as like video games and board games and video games. I said video games just now. He just doesn't like to read. That's the big difference, is he hates reading,
Oh.
despises it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm really lucky in the sense that all of my siblings and my parents, they all love to read. And actually a lot of them love Stephen King. My 2 brothers love Stephen King. One of them has been trying to convince me to read the Dark Tower series for years, which I am reading right now. And my sister, she likes to read more classic literature. But both my parents, my mother was an English teacher, so it's really nice to have so many family members who love to read. So that I can always talk about with my family,
Oh
fortunately.
yeah. My mom's always been an avid reader, but stuff I don't read. Like she just loves, like, when I was growing up, she read a ton of John Grisham, and then now it's David Baldacci or something, and James Patterson. She just reads, like she just tears through stuff. But I grew up living with my dad and my stepmom, who do not read. My dad took my book once, was like, "Why are you reading this book? Ain't got no pictures in it." I'm like, because Dad, and he's like, "Why don't you go outside and play?" And so I go outside and bring my book and sit in the grass and read. He's like, "That ain't what I meant." I'm like, "I know." My dad is a very nice man, but he and I do not share interests in any way. My dad he's a forester, he's a woodsman. He used to come home and be like, "Come look at this rattlesnake I shot between the head at work today." And he shows me a dead rattlesnake with a bullet hole right here. He's like, "I'm gonna skin it and put it up in the garage." And so he did.
Oh,
Skinned it and mounted a rattlesnake skin up in his workshop.
whoa.
My dad is very
Whoa.
Southern, but he's he's a
Wow.
very kind man. He just doesn't like the same crap I do. So
Yeah. I think I'm the only real fantasy lover in my family. So I think that in that way I kind of differ a little
yeah.
bit. Yeah. Cool. So I have some Q&A here, but if anybody wants to drop a question in the chat, feel free. I'm just going to go through some of these questions, and I don't want to just answer these by myself, of course, because I have Alan here. I would love to hear what Alan's answers are to some of these questions too. So
Let's do it.
yeah. So let's see. Oh, this is such a good question. So Senor Channeling Tandem, if I said that correctly.
I think it's Senor Channing Tatum.
Tatum. Oh, okay. Thank you. I think I misspelled that.
Senor Magic Mike there.
So the question is, if it hasn't been asked already, what makes you recommend a book? And that's a good question for you since you recommend books all the time.
Oh, we're starting with me?
Yeah,
Oh.
sure.
What makes me recommend a book is if I don't know, like if while I'm reading it, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like if I gotta keep reading the page or something. I don't know. It's like a character so I'll definitely recommend a book if there's a character in it, a main character in it, who believes very strongly in righting wrongs or is against injustice or trying to correct that. Like, again, that's what Christina calls my, what do you call it, honey? The justice bone? Yeah, my justice bone. Like I get very triggered by things that are not fair, because things could be a lot fairer if people chose to make it so. And so that's why some of my favorite characters, Kelsier, Captain Samuel Vimes, Falkio, and Thomas Senlin, are all have very strong principles. And so that tends to make me recommend a book. In addition, I really like political intrigue. So I like intellectual battles. So, political intrigue where there's there's really clever scheming guys versus these other really clever scheming guys. Those people tend not to be good people. So that's a secondary thing that might make me recommend it. And also military stuff, like really good battle scenes, because fantasy has battle scenes a lot. Like there's a lot of fighting in fantasy. It's just one of the things that's in fantasy. And so it's not all done super well. Some is boring. So if it's really good, I'll recommend that as well. So that's what makes me universally recommend. But then there's books like The Folding Knife, KJ Parker, who I, under no circumstances, universally recommend to everyone. However, there are certain things he does exceptionally well that if you like them, you must read. Like fantasy economics, if you are interested, if you want to hear about someone who knows about banking and is not afraid to put that in a fantasy novel, like that is where it's at. But if you do not want to hear about what kind of axle was attached to the underside of this carriage while they're fixing this broken wheel, or exactly how one manipulates the economy of a country in favor of taking over this other economy, it is not something that you should read, because it's very, very specialized. So I think, yeah, that's what, and especially if I'm thinking about a book like long after it's done, because I'm not super moved by books all the time, just because there's no music. Like I'm much more moved in video games or anime or TV or movies, just because they have the performance that you hear and the swelling music. Music is so manipulative, which is fine. Like I'm happy to go along with the music's crescendo. So yeah, if a book moves me with just my imagination and the words on the page, I'll recommend it. I think that's my off the cuff answer.
That's really a good answer. Yeah, that's very in depth too. For me, I am really careful about recommending books, because I don't feel like the books that I enjoy are going to be the same books that everyone else will enjoy.
I
And
get
it's
that.
funny because Angela from Literature Science Alliance, I know that she did that wonderful video. I think you were mentioned in that video, right? Where she was recommending books to certain booktubers. And I love that video. And she was so good at it. It's like she knew exactly what each booktuber would be looking for in a book. And I told her that in the comment section, I said, I love this concept. I love this video. But for me personally, like, I feel like I would be so scared to recommend a book to somebody. I don't know, because I feel like my taste is so weird about certain things.
But I think that's part of, that's part of the community aspect, is like once we know each other well enough and you see what kind of books that people rate highly and what kind of books that your friends tend to like and tend to dislike. I think that helps narrow down the individual recommendation as opposed to just like the broad recommendation. Because
Yeah.
Angela recommended me a short book because she knows I'm sick and freaking tired of reading these huge tomes. But she, it also has like space battles and stuff that she knows I like. So I think, like obviously you wouldn't recommend, like, it's like perfect example. You are the sole person who is not recommending Piranesi to me, because
I'm not. Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
Well, and that's what I told Angela too. I said, actually, I think I would be really good. I might do this someday. Might do a video on books I do not recommend.
That's a good concept also.
And spoiler alert, I do not recommend Piranesi to Alan for a number of reasons. One is kind of spoilery, so I don't feel like I can give it away.
Oh no.
But I know somebody that you hate, that you've said you've hated, that there's an allusion to in Piranesi. But I just don't think you'd like the character of Piranesi. I could be wrong about that.
Yeah.
But I just have a feeling.
Didn't Philip call it like a meditative?
Yes.
Like that in and of itself sends up like warning bells. Like if Philip loves the meditative nature, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the middle 500 pages of Toll the Hounds. Navel gazing is not my favorite thing. That is true. That is true.
Yeah. It's so funny too, because man, I was thinking about that earlier today too, just about like different booktubers who I have tastes similar to. And there's, it just kind of varies too, because it's like, and it's funny because some booktubers, I don't have the same taste at all as some of them, but I still love them, and I still love hearing what they recommend anyway.
Like you and I are similar on our, like kind of lukewarmness on Jade City. Like I liked Jade City. I liked it better than you did, but I'm just not like, it's not my favorite thing when it tends to be, it's pretty big on BookTube, especially right now.
Yeah, I feel like I'm way in the minority for not loving that book.
Yeah.
Way in the minority. Yeah. So I don't know. That's a good question, but about recommending books. But yeah, short answer to that is I feel like I would have to know what that person is into. So it's like, okay, you're into military fantasy, then
Hmm.
you should definitely check out Malazan. And actually, I've been more, even though everybody's like, oh, I want to read Malazan because of you. I'm always like, no, it's not for everyone. And actually, reading The Dark Tower, I'm thinking I might more universally recommend The Dark Tower over Malazan, even though I love Malazan. And I have a feeling I'm going to love Malazan more when I finish it.
Hmm.
But the Dark Tower is so good, and I feel like you get some, that sort of layered narrative and surreal quality to it, and so many different things in that, and great characters that I think I could more universally recommend that for that reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'm fairly confident just because of the kind of meditative nature that there's a lot of thematic and character stuff in Long Price Quartet, which is why I continue to recommend it to you and Philip
Yeah.
because of y'all's um, love of Malazan and that kind of stuff in Malazan. That's why I keep recommending that. Confirmed by the fact that AP also said he loves Long Price Quartet, which definitely means that it's probably got uh, that level of character work in there.
I need to read it. Yes.
Exceptional.
Oh, and that's funny. So Jake, the bookish drummer, wrote, Alan, read Liza Lockamore.
It's
I've
on
been
my
saying
it's
that
on my note.
forever. I keep on telling people, I'm like, I want Alan to read Liza, but
Have
I'm
you read
also nervous about it too. I'm
it? You
nervous
read it?
that you might not like it. I loved it. Yeah.
Hmm.
I read it a few years ago now, so I probably need to reread it.
Yeah,
And to be honest, I did find it a little slow
that's
getting
what I
into
heard.
it. That's actually probably one of the reasons I haven't moved on in this series is
Hmm.
it took me a long time to get through the book. And plus it's an unfinished series. There are a lot of reasons why I didn't read on in the series or haven't yet. But then the last 200 pages, I thought they were the wildest ride. I thought it was so fascinating. For me, it felt almost like Mission Impossible in fantasy or
Nice,
something.
nice.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's like that, it really makes me think of, yeah, there are a lot of elements to it. I think you would like, there's no war, but, but I still think you might like it.
yeah. I do like books that don't have war. I just really like. I don't really know why. I mean, it has to do with I just have loved the Romans forever, and so the Romans were a particularly martial people. So think it all just ties in.
Yeah.
And I've played D&D forever, so I just like violence in my books, but not like ultra violence. Like I don't like ultra violent things where it just belabors the point and everything. Like I'm okay with war. Like war can be ultra violent, but when it's just like individual like fights and they just want to like super describe like every, you know, human body juice that is expelled from every I'm just like, ugh,
I'm
ah, I
the
don't
same
need.
way. Honestly, I do like it in Malazan
Yeah.
because I don't know why I like it in Malazan because he gets really graphic. Like in
Mhm.
Reaper's Tale,
Yeah.
there are parts where you're following a POV and the character suddenly finds that he's barely conscious there with half his head completely
Yeah.
decapitated. I don't know. It's just crazy. Just the graphic descriptions in that
Yeah.
in some places. But I am like you. I don't feel like I need that much
Mhm.
detail.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's like when it's just a feeling. Like you can feel like if someone's trying to like shock jock you. It's like with scary movies or like horror movies. Like I like horror movies. I mean, I haven't watched them because my wife hates them. Just no. So I haven't really watched them since we've been married. But back when I used to watch a lot of them, I don't really, other than the Saw movies. And Saw only gets a buy because I love Rube Goldberg machines. So, but other than that, I don't really like super gory horror movies. Like that's not what I like. I much more prefer the Lovecraftian kind of like building of suspense and dread kind of movies than I do the look at this person's intestines hanging all over the
yeah.
place. So
Yeah, it's interesting because in our the Dune discussion I just had recently on my channel, that was something Philip talked about that kind of shows Dune's age is that you don't get as much graphic detail as you do in modern fantasy or sci-fi. And that is something I just don't miss when I read class. Like I just recently read a little bit of Conan the Barbarian. Have you ever read Conan?
No, like the whole sword and sorcery genre, like that whole thing is just not. I missed that window, and
Oh,
it's just not my thing. The whole like I don't really know how to describe it, but the whole vibe around kind of Conan as the you know the exemplar of that particular kind of subgenre. That's that's never really been my thing. I've seen one of the Arnold movies, but I've never read any books.
yeah. I just got curious one day. I was like, I just have to. I know that Conan's kind of problematic, by the way. So if I ever talk about it on my channel, I'll definitely bring that up too. That I
Yeah,
think, if I'm not mistaken, there are some possibly racist overtones to it. So that's kind of sad. And there were some problematic elements I saw when
yeah,
in the little bit that I read that are definitely not going to appeal to a lot of readers.
yeah.
But the way that he described the sort of battle within a few pages was incredible to me. I thought it was amazing, and it
Yeah.
was just so yeah, it was amazing. So
Yeah. I love Lovecraft and he's super racist. Like a lot of his stuff is problematic, but some of it isn't. Like there's a lot of it isn't, but there's a lot of stuff that's just like, come on, man. So I understand. I understand reading stuff that is now problematic.
yeah. Oh, and I just want to say in response to everybody who's saying that Liza Lockamora, yeah, it is slow going in the beginning, I thought, because you have that flashback sequence, and I know that that's going to kind of take the pacing down a notch.
Yeah.
But I honestly did. I honestly thought it picked up like crazy towards the end, and that the payoff was worth it. But yeah, you kind of have to be in the mood for a bit of a slow burn, I think.
It is on my patron wheel and it's on my list of things to get to, but I'm not pushing through to get to it because again, not only is it not finished, it's been almost 8 years since the last book came out.
Yeah,
And that is not a pace. That's not a thing. That's not something I want to get into again. I can't do it. I cannot like I just don't want to get through book 3. And by the time I got through book 3, book 4 would probably be out. But then I don't want to wait, I don't want to wait forever for the next book. Like it's different starting Jade, the Greenbone saga, for example, or Books of Babel, where you know when the next one's coming out, like at least in the next couple years. But when you have no idea, it just, I don't know. It puts me off of it of not wanting to jump on it immediately.
yeah, I can totally understand that. Oddly, I'm like that more, and I guess that's why I don't really read a lot of, I don't know, Thomas Covenant. I don't know who that is. I'm sorry.
Why is Charmaine thumbs downing me? Charmaine. Charmaine. I don't know why she's thumbs downing me. She'll tell me.
um, yeah. So interesting. Okay, didn't enjoy it enough. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. Yeah. I totally get not wanting to start a series though that isn't finished. That's a completely understandable thing. Oddly, I'm like that a lot with. I got that way. I started before I started my channel. I actually was reading a lot more YA, and I'm not against YA. I like some of it still, but the problem I have with it is that I never want to continue the series,
Yeah.
and I really lose my momentum. And especially if it's an unfinished series, like for example, Skyward by Brandon Sanderson was one of my favorite YA books of all time. I've
Yeah.
talked about that before. I loved Skyward, loved it. But then the second book, and then now the third one's coming out, and I just have no interest, and I've lost it.
But at least that series will be finished
That's true.
because
Yeah.
there are actually 4 different Brandon Sandersons, all of who have been cloned from the first one. You're only seeing one at any given time, which is how he is able to produce. He actually is he is one of a set of quartuplets,
Quartuplets.
and that information has never gotten out.
So one
And
is Brando Sando, one is Brandy Sandy, one is
there's only one that's named Brandon Sanderson. They just all look alike, and they all just have his name. One of them's name is Keith. The other one's name is Tiresias, and then the last one is what? Oh yeah, Brian, of course. That's fine.
okay. So the thumbs down wasn't for you; it was for problematic books and authors.
No, I mean, I agree. Like, I mean, it's challenging. It's challenging because Lovecraft, I don't think anybody does. I don't think anybody does a buildup of dread and suspense the way Lovecraft does. I've never seen it. I've never seen anybody do it better. Absolutely incredible. But he was an awful, 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 awful man. As far as like, he's just super racist, super xenophobic. But what he did to the horror genre, like, is absolutely amazing. So
I feel
just,
the same way about, like, I mean, like, I've talked about this a little bit. Actually, on Ola's channel, we did a whole discussion on music and fantasy, and I talked about this with Richard Wagner because I love his operas. I love his music so much, and like what he did for the genre. What a horrible person!
Christina's told me the same stuff about Wagner.
He's one of the worst. He's horrible.
Yeah.
You know, and it's hard because some of it does bleed into his music too.
Yeah.
But you could, it's a hard subject.
It is challenging. Wagner being a Nazi.
Yes, essentially.
Yeah. Close enough. So
yeah. Sorry, I'm getting behind on these comments.
Whenever I do live streams, Joanna, I am always between 12 and 18 minutes behind the comments. So don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
Always.
Well, how about this question? I don't imagine we're going to get through everyone. And thank you, though, for everyone who did send a question. By the way, if I don't get to yours, I'm sorry. But the next question was really good. And this is actually from Anita, who was in the chat. I don't know if she still is. But she asked, do you prefer plot-driven stories or character-driven stories? Interesting question.
You want me to answer? Okay, I got you. So
I can answer this, but go ahead.
So the answer is, I'm gonna lean more on plot, and here's why. And I said this in a video a long time ago, because I'm gonna challenge anybody here who says that they're like, no, gotta be character driven. Here's the thing: if one of those things was lacking, I would rather have an interesting plot with crap characters than really interesting people standing around literally doing nothing. Like, that is when you get these literary fiction novels where it's just like, I mean, I guess, but they're standing around in the room discussing matches, and it's just nothing is happening. And like, I don't care. Like, I don't care how interesting they are. If, like, in my real life, there could be super interesting people, but if we're just standing around holding a cup of punch, like, I would much rather us be robbing a bank or something. It's just, what? The police aren't watching this. You can't be arrested for saying things like that. My wife is very concerned with the things that I say on the internet. But it's just like, I think you need both. But I would rather have an interesting plot than just interesting characters and like nothing happening. So, I mean, you know, and that's why movies like that's why the Marvel movies are so popular, you know, and the action. First of all, I love disaster movies, and they have no character at all. But I will watch Armageddon and Deep Impact and San Andreas and Day After Tomorrow and The Core. I will watch them all day because, you know, it's interesting to happen. Now, I do want interesting characters, of course. Like, that's one of the reasons I love the Books of Babel, and I love the Long Price Quartet. But, gun to my head, if I had to have one of them suck, I would rather have sucky characters than a sucky plot. But that's just me personally.
Yeah, you know what? For me, I think I'm going to go with characters. But at the same time, I hear what you're saying, because like, the characters can't, like, something needs to be happening. Like, the characters need to be like conflicted or going through something, or I don't know. I can't just like, I don't know.
You can be in a room where they're all stressing out about the speed at which the paint is drying.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, my guys could be overthrown.
It just feels like more like a slice of life type of thing, and that's been kind of hard for me to get into. But I don't know. I think I'm a little more, you know what book, though, really changed my perception on making me think I'm maybe a more character-driven reader, which I think I am. And that would be Before They're Hanged by Joe Abercrombie. Because before that, I really thought I had to have equal parts. And then with that book, the character work was so good. And I didn't feel like I knew what the plot, like, what's the point? What are they doing? I don't even know what they're doing. It just seems so pointless, at least at that point. Later on, there's a point. There is a point through the whole entire trilogy, but at that point I wasn't seeing it, but I just loved the characters so much, and I thought they were so funny, and the combination of characters in that book was so brilliant
Mhm.
that I was fine with just not caring what was happening.
Yeah, I think the reverse happened to me where I realized how impactful a character-driven thing could be when I read Long Price Quartet, and because there's not a lot of action. There's a lot of plot, but there's not a lot of action. But those characters, like the relationship between these two men over 60 years of their life it was just fantastic. And so then, so now I understand character-driven readers, but I didn't beforehand. I'm just like, okay. But I think you need both. I think great characters can absolutely just elevate a great plot and vice versa. So,
Yeah, the best thing is when they go together. When you see like how the motivation is intertwined and the journey and everything kind of goes together. And I never really thought about how that works
mhm,
until actually AP did a great video about this, like one of the first videos I saw of his where he talked about motivation and plot and how they go
mhm,
together. And I was like, what? That's amazing. Like I never thought about it before, but
yeah. You
all
said
these things really should be going together, I think.
Yeah, you said slice of life, and all I can think about is I would rather watch an anime where there's people fighting, like beating something up, than watch a slice of life anime about, a struggling manga artist who goes to work and then, gets they give him the wrong change at the fast food restaurant, and then he sits in his yard and weeps and draws in his little book, and then his neighbor comes over and they sit and they eat dinner, and then they go to sleep, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, can someone fight something? Can someone just fight something?
Yeah, that's why I'm so picky about animes. Oh,
Yeah.
well, I saw
My
this.
wife is opposite of me though.
Uh, yeah, and then there's this question here. What are some books you guys consider a guilty pleasure?
I am ashamed of nothing that I read.
Hmm, yeah.
So I do not have a guilty pleasure because I don't think so. You answer this one first, Joanna. I'll think if
Sure.
there's anything that I'd be
Well,
ashamed to
I
talk
don't
about.
know if it's considered a guilty pleasure, but I just read my first manga. I read the manga
Oh,
Orange, and I don't think manga is considered. It seems like everybody's reading manga these days. So I don't. I think if I were the only one, I'd feel a little embarrassed about that, being my age and reading manga. But everybody's embraced the manga, so people
yeah,
older than me on BookTube are reading manga. So
yeah,
I've embraced it, and I really loved it. And it was actually a very emotionally moving story too.
yeah.
A lot of trigger warnings, honestly,
Mhm,
but yeah, so I guess that would be the closest I could
yeah.
think of right now. And I have, like I said, I used to read more YA, and I think
Mhm,
I felt, I think that it's interesting because like I think there was a time when I would have felt embarrassed or uncomfortable about that. But
mhm.
I think BookTube, like discovering BookTube, I'm like, oh, there are people who are adults who read YA, and it's
Yeah,
okay. So
yeah,
it's just interesting the way culture kind of shifts those perceptions on what is a guilty pleasure or not.
yeah. Yeah, I don't read a ton of manga. I prefer the anime. Like I'll read manga if someone recommends to me and there is no anime to watch. If there's an anime, I'm gonna watch that instead. Um, Mostly because anime is expensive, or sorry, manga is expensive. And they're short and you have to read a ton of them. I'd rather just watch it. But I don't know. I don't read a bunch of stuff that's really a guilty pleasure. Like I don't. I mean, it would have been anime back when it was weeb nerd stuff. And it used to be D&D books, like Forgotten Realms books and stuff like that, because people would make fun of you because you're like, "Ugh, what are you reading?" Like fantasy was a guilty pleasure for me back when I was growing up because this was before D&D and all that stuff had hit the mainstream. So I don't know. Christina, do I read anything that I'm embarrassed about? That I try to hide from people? That I'm guilty pleasure? I don't know. I
I
don't know.
never, yeah, you weren't embarrassed about that though. You
No, I would read a novelization of the Golden Girls, and I would call that a
oh,
guilty pleasure.
interesting. Okay,
I love the Golden Girls so much, and I don't really understand why, other than it's just good.
yeah. I never really got into that show,
The
honestly.
Golden Girls?
No, I've never been into sitcoms though, to be honest with you. But
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but
yeah,
I watched it with my grandma, and now I love it.
yeah, that's cool. That's neat. Yeah. Let's see. So favorite, yeah, I guess on this topic, so favorite YA books. Do you have any favorite YA books? Oh, Fireborn, right?
Fireborn is excellent. Fireborn is excellent. The Diabolic was actually the first half of the Diabolic was insanely good. Like I couldn't believe it. I'm like, this is a YA book, and then the back half, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, it is a YA book. There we go. So I really liked the Diabolic. That is one that I am actually excited to keep reading. Fireborn for sure. I want to read Fury Song when it comes out, the third one. Other than that, I mean, the We Free Men, like I know I give the We Free Men a hard time, but it's Pratchett YA, so I
Oh, I
certainly
didn't know that was YA. Okay.
yeah, it's meant for younger adults. And he has another one, Maurice and His Amazing Educated Rodents, which is like a spin on the Pied Piper, where it's the cat who leads the rats out, and the Piper just thinks it's him. It's YA. We just bought that for my nephew for his birthday because he likes to read. So Pratchett YA, Fireborn. I'm trying to think if I've read any others. It's not ACOTAR in any way, shape, form, or fashion. An awful book. I mean, I like Harry Potter but I read it as an adult.
Me too.
Yeah. I guess this is YA, not middle grade. So I can't get into middle grade. It just reads so young. I tried reading Percy Jackson, which should be something that appeals to me.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't get through The Lightning Thief. So yeah, I'll say those.
Yeah. For me, I really loved Skyward by Brandon Sanderson.
Not read it yet.
I would even consider reading that again. The sequel, it just didn't work for me. I'm trying to think. I also really love the book, The Neverending Story by Michael Ende, which is a classic these days. It is a classic, actually, because it was written, I think, I don't want to say it was the 50s. I don't think it was that long ago. But yeah, there's the movie, The Neverending Story. Have you seen the movie, Alan?
I've seen movie 1, 2, and
those are bad.
I am a staunch defender of The Neverending Story 3 with younger Jack Black. Jack Black's in that one.
Okay, I think I have heard that the third one's not bad. Now that you mention it,
for a direct-to-video sequel, it is not bad. It is not bad. I have watched it many times. My brother and we used to spend summers with my mother, and so she worked, and so we just hung out during the day and played video games and watched the same movies on repeat. Angels in the Outfield, Cool Runnings, Mighty Ducks 2 and 3, and then The Neverending Story. We like 2 better than the first one, really, because we didn't like the wolf with the nothing right at the end of that first one. And we also don't like the horse dying. Like, what is that? But Neverending Story 2 and 3, and we watched these movies and then, every Disney movie ever made on repeat, which is why every time, Christina will attest, every time we get together, we will literally just begin quoting old live action Disney movies.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous. So it's good.
The movie, I love the adaptation of The Neverending Story. I love that movie. But when I was in high school, a friend of mine lent me the book, and I had no idea it was based on a book. And when I read the book, I was completely blown away that the movie actually ends like halfway through the book.
Yeah, I heard that.
And the book, I still think it's so good. Andrew from Get Right On In did a wonderful review comparing the movie to the book. He did an amazing job discussing like the difference in the themes, because there are a lot of differences. Like,
yeah,
it's a bit darker, I think, the book, but it's not that much dark. It's still middle grade, I would say.
What's the girl's name? Is it the Childlike Empress?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I love that book, though. I love both.
I love how Bastian changes 3 different times. Bastian is different in all 3 movies.
He's described as a chubby boy in the book.
He is not in the movies.
He's like this really awkward, like bullied, chubby boy.
Yeah.
And it's very important, actually. That's actually a very important part of his character, like just feeling really uncomfortable in his body and his skin. So
that is such an important thing. Have you read the manga Death Note? I think you would like Death Note.
I haven't read it, but I watched the anime, and it's one of my favorite animes. It is my favorite anime.
Yes, Joanna, and the Netflix live action adaptation does the exact same thing that it does right there, and it screws it up. Yeah. Light is not bullied. It is important that Light is not bullied. Light is an affluent, handsome, popular kid. You lose the entire point if you make Light bullied and using the Death Note as a way to avenge that. He is a sociopath. He is a privileged child who is bored. That's the difference. And why do people like?
Yeah.
And then the producer like, well, why don't people watch it? Because you change important thematic crap.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's so good.
I did like the way what is it? Urugami? How do you say it? I can't remember. The demon guy.
The Inugami. The Inugami, right? The Inugami.
Yeah, I liked how that was portrayed in the real live action.
I like Willem Dafoe as Lights.
Yeah.
The voice actor.
But I agree with you. The anime was way better. And yeah, it does definitely change.
It's so good. The anime is amazing, Joanna.
Yeah, it's amazing. You all, if you have not watched Death Note, you have to watch Death Note. It is so good.
No, I personally, though Patrick is the only person I've ever heard that disagrees with this. Maybe you do as well, Joanna. I strongly encourage you that when you're watching the Death Note anime to please stop when it's supposed to end. You will know when it's supposed to end. Please do not continue with season 2 or the back part of it. I do not like it. I think it should have ended where it was supposed to end. And then it just, I didn't like the way it ended. It made me so sad. Like as soon as Mello and Nier or whatever come on the scene, I am not a fan. So, but that is, Patrick loves it. And I'm like, Patrick.
Patrick seems to be very
Patrick likes most things.
Easygoing, yeah, when it comes to his opinions, for sure. Let's see. Let's come up with another question. Book that best describes you. I don't think I have one right now, but what's a book that best Semlin Ascends for Alan? I don't know.
It is the Night Watch.
The Night Watch. Oh yeah, of course.
By Terry Pratchett. Because Vimes is my spirit animal. I just want to be Samuel Vimes so badly. I'm more like Falkio. Like I'm more emotional than Vimes is. I wish I had Vimes's calm control, but I'm more like Falkio in the Grey Coats, probably. Outraged idealism, they call it in the 4th book. Yeah. But yeah, any of those, any of the Guards books or the Grey Coats books, Books of Babel also. And then I secretly wish that I was the final empire, bringing down an evil empire.
Yeah.
That's all I want, is to start a revolution. That's it. That's it. I just want to overthrow the injustice and the corruption.
Yeah.
Because you can do that in fantasy.
That's a good point. Trying to think. Okay. Yeah, I don't think I have a book like that right now. I know I've been saying a lot of times that I for whatever reason, I tend to like books with time travel. I mean, that's why I ended up reading that manga Orange. And I think that kind of speaks to another question that I received here. Somebody asked, I can't find it now, but somebody asked about favorite themes. Maybe it was Evie. I'm trying to see who asked that, but somebody asked about like favorite, what are my favorite themes in books? And I think that one of my favorite themes is time. I just love the theme of time and the theme of memory too. But the thing about time, especially like in time travel and things like that, is just realizing you can't change the past. And even if you can, like the tragic results of that, or I don't know, just seeing consequences for your actions.
Yeah.
I think they become so much more meaningful when you kind of whenever I look at time travel stories, I think that's the one thing that a lot of them seem to help me bring attention to is one, they help me bring attention to how important the moment is and how you can't change things and your actions matter. What you do now with your time matters.
Mm-hmm.
But I also really love time travel stories. And of course, I love other books that aren't time travel stories, but I love time travel stories that are historical fiction, that have some historical fiction element. Not all of them, actually. I just read Orange, and that didn't have historical fiction at all. But I love also the historical fiction element in which we're not romanticizing the past. Like, for example, 11/22/63 by Stephen King. He goes back to the 50s, but it's not romanticized.
Yeah.
Like you see just the gritty, ugly details of that time when even when people seem to think it was like a great era or something
Yeah.
like that. I'm trying to think. There was another example. I read a book like that took place in the '60s, Summer of Love, and it showed kind of the beauty of the hippie movement, but also the ugliness of it too. And so
Mhm.
I really love seeing those kind of details in historical fiction or in time travel books. Uh, but yeah, so those are just some themes that speak to me. Of course, I think maybe some of the more classic ones too, like grief or loss,
Yeah.
that are family dynamics too, those kinds of things. But you would, I guess, with you, it would be real justice and
Yeah, anytime, yeah. I mean, it's hard to like for me. It's hard to separate when I'm not in an individual book, like themes from tropes. But yeah, anytime like class warfare is a big thing that I like, where the like I the corrupt aristocracy is getting theirs. Like I'm a big fan of that. Like Vimes's thing is there must be a policeman for kings, like, and that the law has to apply to everyone, or else it's not justice, it's tyranny. And these are two huge things that I say in my life all the time. I just quote Pratchett all the time because it's true, and it bothers me so much that when the rules don't apply, because I like rules. Like I'm a very ordered person, which is weird. My order side vies with my chaotic side all the time, but if they're not applied equally, there's no point in having them. Like it's crap. Like why is this person excused but not this person? I'll tell you why, because that person's rich, that person's poor, and it drives me crazy because it's not fair. It's not fair. That's crap. Um, and so, yeah, so those themes, like, that's why I really like, revolution and overthrowing the evil empire. But I also really love the exploration of what comes after the revolution, which is why Well of Ascension I like so much, is what comes after things when things are done. I like books like Fireborn, like what comes after they because in Fireborn they overthrow the previous regime and what comes after that. So it's just I like that exploration of government and the hard decisions that have to be made, and how people, even well-meaning people, get it wrong, and how I like corruption arcs a lot also. Like one of my favorite things is when the hero of the first book is the villain by the end of the last book. So I don't like corruption. I hate it, but I like seeing how it happens. It's just interesting to me how people can allow themselves, even good people who began good, can end up being um, corrupted by power and stuff like that. So exploration of what power does to people,
yeah,
and the law and justice, anything that has a watch, like a city watch, or is following like a detectives or constabulary, those kinds of things, because I don't know, I just really interested in the concepts of law and governance, and that's why I like political intrigue and stuff. So those are some of my favorites as well.
I,
And oh, by the way, consequences, I also like when
yeah.
there's consequences for actions. I think you are going to really, really like the Long Price Quartet. That's why it's called that. It's like it's paying the
Yeah,
long price. You make a
yeah, that
decision and
sounds. Oh
see
yeah,
what
I know.
happens.
I
So,
mean, I'm so excited. I just laugh because I know it has to come up in any chat. Alan has to say long price quartet. Yes, I definitely think I will love it for sure.
Jimmy, that's not true, and you know it. Jimmy's getting me riled up. Jimmy's trying to get me riled up. The,
What is
the,
it? What
the
Jimmy?
one before that. The one before that. That.
Alan.
No, I do not, Jimmy, and you know it.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I do not.
What was I going to say about the? Oh yeah, another theme I really love, and it's kind of related to all these things too, like especially the leadership part and power part, is the theme of loyalty.
Yes.
That's a theme that speaks to my heart because I don't know. I mean, you can look at loyalty; it can become so oversimplified that loyalty is good. That
Mm,
loyalty is a good thing, being patriotic is a good thing, or that kind of thing, and like being loyal to a leader, and I just love it when that's sort of turned on its head and you start to see the sort of dark side of that being loyal has a tipping point, basically, that you have to,
Yeah.
you have to shift it at a certain point. There have to be consequences for that.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that's
There's a
cool.
main character in The Faithful and the Fallen that has that, that blind loyalty is ridiculous. Because yeah, I mean, Jimmy, because you're right. Like at some point, like blind loyalty, at some point you're obeying orders that are bad orders. And again, Pratchett's City Watch explores that exact thing also. But like I'm an extremely loyal person. So, Jesse gave me my first shout out on BookTube. And so because of that, like I will 100% for all time defend Jesse and like be loyal to Jesse. And if Jesse's like, you know what, I hate this person, I'll be like, all right, you know what, they probably deserve it. I got you. Like, and
Yeah.
I'll be yeah, I'll fall in. Just because how I am in my real life as well. It's hard for
I'm
me to.
the same way. I'm like, I mean, well, I've talked about the Enneagram before. I still need to make a video about that, but on the Enneagram, just if anyone's interested, I would identify as a type 6, which is the loyalist, because I tend to be very loyal to people once I'm, and I see that as like a beautiful thing. And also it's something to be careful about too, because when you form a bond with somebody, then you have to be careful that you still there still have to be a certain amount of boundaries, right? So
Yeah.
because people are flawed, people are going to make mistakes, and
One of
yeah.
the hardest things was like when I was considering leaving the classroom, I couldn't even begin to consider it because the people who had hired me, who put their trust in me, and my first year, being a first year teacher, I would rather be shot in the foot than to go back in time and ever be not having taught before. It was the worst experience of my entire life, and I was awful, and I deserved to get booted. But they saw something and they believed in me and they stuck up for me and I kept my job. And now I'm an exceptional teacher. But that kind of like they stuck up for me when they didn't have to, because I was a first year teacher. They could have booted me, and so that breeds loyalty. And so for a while, I'm like, these people hired me and I'm going to leave them in the lurch, not having a Latin teacher. Now they're gone. Like everyone from that original regime is gone. So now it's, I don't owe anybody anything. So yeah, I sometimes struggle with loyalty too much to where I, can't separate it and make bad decisions for myself. So
Yeah, we love Jesse. Jesse's wonderful. Yeah, loyalty is a double-edged sword for sure.
agreed.
Yeah, so I really love seeing that explored in books, because I do think it can be easy to oversimplify it in life, and I see people. You see people do that all the time too, right?
Yeah.
So maybe reading does make you smarter. I don't know.
Yeah. But I appreciate that, Jimmy.
Yes, 100%.
We're trying to get it to where I can have. I'm trying to get several like part-time things to where I can get out of the classroom eventually. And it's not that I don't like. I love my students and I love what I do, but it is just incredibly taxing. Especially if we want to have a family and all that stuff. It's just a lot of bandwidth that it takes. And loyalty. See, my loyalty is not. There's loyalty like words get messed up in America. Like the English language is so easily co-opted. Loyalty to me is like someone has done something to earn your loyalty. It's not like I'm loyal to you because I'm using it specifically in a political context. I'm loyal because this is my political party, therefore I am loyal. That's not the same thing. Like loyalty to me is like someone has shown that they are they've done something selfless for you. They have stuck up for you. They have trusted you with something. It's not like this is a like that. Like that's what I'm like. I would not be a crown loyalist if we were in the revolution. I wouldn't be what are the Whigs, where they were the loyalists, or were they the Tories? I forget which one was the loyalist, which one was the revolutionary. But yeah, so that's why I'm a big fan of the revolutionary. So like governmental loyalty is not my thing. So like overthrow that crap. But like individual loyalty on an individual level, like loyalty to your commander. Like I would have been one of the ones loyal to Caesar because he's my commander. He trusted me, led us to wealth, led us to fame and to glory, and we think he cares about us, that kind of thing. But I would have unfortunately been one of those people who was more loyal to Caesar than to Rome and the state, which makes me a criminal. But
It's such an interesting topic. It really is. I love what Kate said here, that loyalty often is lacking in today's society as a
Yeah.
whole,
Yeah.
partially because honesty and trust is harder too. Yes,
Yeah.
that's so
Well,
true.
we have unfortunately in our society currently, we have a deification of the self, where we have elevated ourselves to our own personal gods, and your needs are more important than anyone else's. And you live in your own world, and your needs, you are going to get yours no matter the cost to anybody else. And that leads to broken honesty and broken trust. And also, we don't like to work for anything. So if it's hard, boom, boot it out and find something else. And so it's just like our word doesn't mean anything anymore. And I don't know how we got in a freaking like cultural topic here, but words should matter. The
Yeah.
words you say should matter, but they don't, because we can say anything and it's free. And I talk to my students all the time about this. I'm like, so guys, here we go. Like your significant other in high school, they can say, I love you. Oh, I love you so much. And then they can do all this stuff, treat you poorly, run around on you, like call you names, like never. Only one of those things can be true. So it costs them nothing to say this. And then because they said this, that cost nothing, you now give them carte blanche to act however they want. Like, guys, no, like words are free. They mean nothing. It costs me nothing. I could tell y'all, guys, you know what? We're not going to do any more work the rest of the year. Every one of y'all are all going to get hundreds at the end of the year. And I'm going to take you all to Chuck E. Cheese, and I'm going to buy you like 100 tokens. And then I'm going to pay for all your college because I'm Michael Scott. That's what I'm going to do. And you know what? They'll be like, yes, hey, Scott, what you going to do? What you going to do? Make our dreams come true. Cost me nothing to make that promise. And that's why Michael Scott does that in that episode. It's just that's why there's no trust, because no one, and the reason that people don't keep their word is because we do not have consequences for our actions. This goes back to the whole thing of someone can steal millions of dollars of people's retirement and somehow not go to prison. Somehow just be like, you know what? Oh, I'll pay a fine. That's fine. Like,
Yeah.
There are no consequences for actions. In school, kids can miss as much school as they want. No consequences. Because of this deification of the self, and I'm sorry, I've literally just stood in the soapbox and started proselytizing.
We love it. It's a fine.
Because of this, we do not like anyone telling us what to do. Meaning, you cannot hold me accountable for anything. I am accountability free. Why? Because I am the God of this universe. And how dare you tell me, Zeus of my own world, what to do? And because everyone feels like that, it's a bloody free for all. And so no one trusts anybody anymore. And it just makes me sad. And so I'll put my soapbox away. I apologize. I feel very strongly about certain.
No, it's a really important topic. I mean, this is why I love this topic being explored so much in literature.
Yes.
I think we are a culture of, like, I think kind of speaking to Caitlin's point, it's like sort of like a culture of I'll put my loyalty in you if you give me this in return too. It's like always this.
That's what my students try to like. Some of my students are like, well, why should I respect them when they haven't respect? I'm like, no. They're like, you got to earn my respect. I'm like, this is false. You start with respect. Can someone lose it? Yes. But this whole, like, you don't start with giving someone respect, that's rude. Like, that's just douchey. Like, you should respect your fellow human being to start with. And then if they do something to lose it, that's fine. It's not their right to have it it doesn't give them license to act however they want, but you should just assume that they're worthy of your respect to start with. And it's a terrible attitude.
I agree. I 100% agree with that. Yes, absolutely. Let's see, actions speak louder than words.
100%.
Yeah. People are loving it, by the way. They're like, preach on your soapbox.
Guys, this is what my classroom is like. I always tell my classroom, I'm like, guys, this is a Latin class, but it's also half a here's how to not be a douchebag class. You want to know why? Because we got enough of those. So when you graduate, if I have stopped just one of you from being, a douchebag in the real world, I've done my job. because
Yeah.
we have enough. We don't need any more.
How do your students respond whenever you talk like this? Like,
They
because
love
we
it.
love it.
They
Do they
want to,
love
like,
it as much as we do?
one of them a few years ago made me a book of my hashtag, because I call them hashtag Walker Life Lessons. And they just like started writing crap down that I said. One of them's like, can we start a Twitter with your, I'm like, I mean, okay, I guess. But they like it. Most of them like it. Every now and then someone wants to argue with me, and it's the kids that I don't expect. It's the ones that I'm personally attacking for acting that way.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I don't know that they act that way a lot, but the ones that argue with me are the ones that, wants people to be permissive of their behavior. And I'm like, guys, I'm not your parents. You can act however you want outside my classroom, but in here, we're not going to make fun of each other like mean-spiritedly. We're not going to be rude. We're not going to, use this kind of language. We're not going to treat people like this. Not in here. In here, you're going to listen to this. But I just want them to think. I want them to think about things and think about the way they act and to treat other people. I say to them, I'm like, guys, your character matters more than what you're going to accomplish. Like, who you are matters. Who you are as a person and the way you treat other people matters. Kindness matters. And kindness is not a weakness, because so many, especially the young gentlemen, think that kindness equals weakness. And if I hear them say the word beta in my class, oh, the thunder and the lightning is coming down. I'm like, we are not going to talk with this ridiculous rhetoric that you think is okay in here. It's not going to happen. And then, when I talk about that, like, oh, well, you're just mad because you did. I've had kids be like, well, you're just mad because when you were like, you tried this and you've been rejected a lot by, and I'm like, this is false. I've had a girlfriend pretty much, like, I have been dating someone pretty much since I was the age of 17. So no, I have not had difficulty finding romantic companionship, child. So, because they assume that children assume that if you don't like something, that it is because you could not, that you're jealous. You can't dislike something unless you're jealous. And it's like false. And it's a good thing that my self-worth isn't wrapped up in what 16-year-olds think of me. Like, and I just try to help them understand that being kind matters, character matters, that it is okay that you like stuff that's different than your peers. It's okay to be weird. Like, it's okay, because teenagers are fools, all of them. So it doesn't matter what other fools think of you. Like, literally, it doesn't matter. So you do what you want. If someone makes fun of you, who cares? Who cares? They're fools. Fools. Anyway, sorry. I feel very strongly about people being decent human beings, Joanna.
How did you turn out right, Alan?
I was a douchebag for a long time. Seriously, and I have to tell my kids, I was not a good person for a long time because I was angry. I was very, very angry because I had undiagnosed Asperger's, and so I struggled growing up. And my parents, as I said, were nothing like me. And I was really nice, and I was easily gullible because I was on the spectrum and I believed things that people said. And so people were mean to me. And so finally I was tired of it. And so I overcorrected and I became mean. And it was my job. I've always been smart. Like, I've always been intelligent, and I wielded it like a blade. And all I did was, and I had friends who were just as cynical as I was, but if they weren't in my friend group, they were going to, the Excalibur of the mind. I was just going to whip them down and make them feel small. And I did that for a long time. And then finally, I didn't want to be like that. That's not how I wanted to be anymore. And so I am trying to teach them the lessons that I learned before, they have to deal. I mean, I was almost 30 before I decided that I should be a decent human being and not a bad one. Like, and I feel bad for a lot of decisions that I made, and I hurt a lot of people over there. Like, what is this live stream? But, so yeah, I just think that who you are matters. And I'm trying to show them that you can go through terrible things and still be a decent human being. Like, your circumstances don't have to determine the way you treat others. Like, you can be I went through an extraordinarily gross divorce 5 years ago, something like that. And I was teaching, and I had to show my students that, I have a right to my wrath, and I could I could go out and counterstrike and, retaliatory destruction. And I didn't, because, it's better to just, turn the other cheek and be a better person. So,
It's interesting because in the assumptions video I did, a lot of people also were writing in the comments like, I can't see you as a troublemaker. Like you seem like you're such a nice person, and I appreciate that, and I hope so. I hope I am nice, but I feel the same way as you, Alan. I don't feel like I've. Well, I could say I'll put it this way. I feel like I was incredibly, when I look at my teenage self, not that I hate who I was when I was young, but I do see somebody who was incredibly privileged and selfish and self-centered. So I make myself sound horrible, but I think
no,
what woke me up was I was really lucky, actually through fantasy, honestly, because I made a lot of friends who were. This is so nerdy about me, and I'm usually embarrassed to admit it, but I
no,
think
it's
I'm
totally
getting
fine.
over it. But I was a LARPer. I was into live action role playing because I met a group of friends who were into that. And the cool thing about that group of friends, and I think it's also what I love about BookTube, is it was a very kind of like non-ageist group of friends. So
Mhm.
I was actually one of the youngest people in that group of friends, but I had friends in that group who were in their later teens or early 20s, and even some people who were older than that, who kind of like looked after us, like, even though we were younger, kind of like made sure we were okay, not partying too hard, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the thing about that group of friends was that through having kind of older people around me, who treated me like a human being, even though I was a selfish, self-absorbed, privileged teenager, I saw people who were really struggling to make it on minimum wage and go to college and uh, do things like adulting, basically. And
Yeah.
I realized like how lucky I was. All of a sudden, I realized, wow, the things I complain about,
Oh yeah.
this is ridiculous. What am I doing? What am
Mm.
I doing?
Yeah.
And I had a total shift in my life. I started caring about learning. I started caring about school and trying to do a good job. I actually became good friends with a lot of the teachers that I gave a hard time to, and
Nice.
principal. And so I think that that's something that I would see as a solution. Like
Yeah.
what you're doing for your students is so powerful that you're actually willing to give them those sort of life lessons. But I
Mhm.
think if we just had more kind of like mentor type figures in our society for
Mhm.
people, I think that would make such a big difference.
Yeah. How old are you? If you can answer that. Did you grow up in the 80s? Is
uh, I'm older than you, Alan.
Oh,
So
okay. So okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I yeah.
The
Go ahead.
I'm just saying that because LARPing, it depends on when you grew up on the social acceptability of LARPing. If
Oh,
you're
it
older.
wasn't socially acceptable, probably, but I just did it anyway.
Oh, yeah. No. What I'm saying is it's a bigger deal that you LARPed when we were growing up than
Yeah,
if you are LARPing now. Because I it was D&D for me. It's like it was so because so Christina will cry when she talks about baby Alan, because when I was a child, like I had an indomitable spirit. I wanted to learn everything. Like I was gonna do this and this and this, like children are. And even as a teenager, like I was a happy, nice, like I loved everybody and everything. And it was just the constant people being douchebags that I was just like, you know what? Screw this. And that's so hard now when I see it happen in high school. Is you try to keep the kids' dreams alive because you don't want them to be cynical. Like you don't want to, crush that curiosity and that the stuff that they hope for. The world's going to do enough of that. Like the real world's going to do enough of quashing their spark and their passion. And it doesn't help that I live in Florida, which is trying to take away the 4-year scholarship for any kid in college who is not studying a degree that directly leads to employment.
yeah.
As if the kids who aren't STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, need more help feeling bad about themselves, because all you hear is that, like, if you're into the arts or the humanities. Jimmy and Philip were talking a little bit about this last night
I heard that, yeah.
yeah, like we already tell them that doesn't mean anything, because we assign value to people based on how much money they can produce. And it's absolutely a travesty. And this is what I have to tell my kids, because especially the ones that want A's so they can get into a good college. I'm like, what does that mean? I'm like, guys, education is about learning things. It's about learning how to critically think, being exposed to a bunch of different perspectives. It's about studying where we came from so you can see where we're going. It is about expanding your mind. That's what it's about. Yeah, sometimes you go to college, if you're going to be an engineer, yeah, you're going to go learn how to engineer. But even what you learn in school, until you're on that job, my brother's an engineer, and until he was on the job, he's like, yeah, okay, like theoretically I knew how to do it. It's the fact that we don't value education drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Like, knowing things for knowing things' sake is an important thing. It is important to know things so that you can be a more well-rounded human being. And that contributes to the problem I was just talking about, how we're so self-centered, just because we don't think about other people, because we don't learn about these other perspectives and broadening our minds. I am a firm believer in education and lifelong learning and knowing stuff. When I teach Caesar, everything Julius Caesar did, it's that Mickey Mouse meme. This is a surprise tool that will help us later. When he's fixing the roads, he's learning construction and engineering, which helped him later. When he's traveling through Italy, he's meeting people, learning the things that bother them, their struggles in southern Italy, which, he lived in central Italy, filing it away for later. It's just this lifelong learning that, I want them to understand. Man, all right.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, and the thing is, like, university, the word university comes from the word universal. The idea of the original universities was to give a more universal, well-rounded education that wasn't just math and science, but also music, humanities, things like that. So yeah, it's really sad. And even in the arts, because, that's where I work in music, it's still kind of going in this direction of, not to say it's all bad, a lot of good things are happening there, but there is a lot that's going towards numbers. And it's interesting because I know this whole talk you did in response to Michael Nipp's video, and Pay from Attention was in the chat a minute ago, and he talked about this in his video too, in the response to that video, about how, like, if we didn't need all this diversity of perspectives, we could just look at like a research study or stats and know what books to read. That sort of learning diversity, learning different perspectives is just, I'm just talking about the microcosm and booktube in that example, but it really does, we all know this, right? It does something for us to enrich our perspectives,
100%.
even if those of us who are here, we aren't profiting from it directly, like as in numbers, as in money.
Yeah, no.
So
absolutely agree. And again, I'm not a sickle waving Soviet. Like, I'm not out there, singing the Soviet national anthem. But the problem that we are obsessed. We are obsessed with money. And we determine people's success, we determine their value, we determine their worth to society based on how much money they make and how much money they can bring in the people above them. And it's unconscionable. It is unconscionable that people are treated like numbers. And it just gets me riled up. And then we go back to Samuel Vimes, where we have, this class warrior stuff, to where no one who is working full-time, no one who is working to try to support their family should be unable to support their family. And it bothers me so much. It bothers me so much because, you know what? And, I don't like to get political online. I just don't. But you know what? People can afford to pay people so they can support their families. And all it means is that you have slightly fewer billions of dollars. There comes a point where it's literally just people trying to compare the length of their fake genitalia. Like, what dragon hoard, how big of a dragon hoard of money can you curl on top of? And it better be bigger than the dragon that lives next door. All it means is that you have slightly fewer coins in your stack. You're not going hungry. Everyone you have ever met is going to be fine if they just, pick from the plunder hoard that you have. You can pay these people to where they can bloody support their families when they're working full time. All it means is you have slightly fewer billions. It's It
Yeah,
upsets me.
yeah,
It upsets me
absolutely.
greatly.
This is actually really inspiring me to want to read on in the City Watch. I've been wanting to. I'm eager to. But
Samuel Vimes.
I was actually talking about this to my brother. By the way, I actually bought him Guards. I need to find out if he finished it because I just know he'd love it.
Yeah.
But he actually said that there's like he mentioned a famous quote from the City Watch. I think it's in one of the later books about a man who just barely makes enough money to buy a pair of boots. Do you know that quote?
That's the Samuel Vimes theory of economic unfairness, to
Yeah.
where poor people spend more money because the stuff that they buy is cheap, so it breaks more often, so they have to keep replacing it. And I have a perfect example. That's it, and it's with Vimes. I wear one time for my birthday, like 8 years ago, 9 years ago, whatever. My mom bought me. My stepdad bought me a really nice pair of loafers. I don't like tying my shoe. Having Asperger's, I was the first kid in my class to learn how to read, last one to tie my shoe. My shoe always comes undone. I like slip-on shoes. And so they bought me a really nice pair of loafers that was, relatively expensive, certainly for what I would pay for shoes. And I wore them, the only shoes I wore for like 4 years. I wore them almost every day, 4, 5, 6 years. They finally to where I'm like, I need to replace them. And this was when I'm with Christina, and I'm like, I don't really want to pay that much for shoes. So I bought a pair of loafers that was about half the price. I wore them every day. In 5 months, the sole was falling off of it.
Wow.
Where I had worn the other ones for 5 years every day without the sole. So I immediately went and bought, and this was almost 3 years ago, bought another pair of the ones I'd had before. I'm wearing them right now.
It's like a literal example of what Vimes' theory is.
Absolutely.
I loved that quote. Even though I haven't read that far yet, I actually went on Goodreads, found the quote, and highlighted it as one of my favorite quotes. And I definitely want to read on in that series because I just love these kinds of social issues, especially if it could be approached the way that Pratchett can do it. So,
and it's just very, I mean, it's handled. Like, it's not preachy. It's not like Pratchett isn't. No one's ever going to accuse Pratchett of being like, oh, well, you're just in my face. No, he handles it in a very human way. And I've said this before, but one of my favorite parts in one of them is one of the guards catches one of the like sub criminals that's part of this thing. Anyway, his actions led to the death of an old lady and her daughter in the slums, which is where Vimes grew up. And the Watchman catches him and it's like, hey, you killed these two people. And the criminal says, were they important? And the cop is like, you are so lucky that I'm here and not Vimes, because if Vimes had heard you say that, like if Vimes had heard the guy literally ask, does it matter if they died? Because they're poor, who cares? That right there is just everything that I love about Samuel Vimes. Is he's not going to listen to that. Like, and that's how I feel. It's just, and again, it's whatever. We don't have to get political, but I don't know. I just love this about fantasy. This is what
I love it. Yeah.
This is what introduced me into fantasy and why I ended up loving fantasy, because in fantasy, a lot of the wrongs can be righted. A lot of the injustice is fixed because you can do that because it's fiction, and you have the swords and the shields and the band who's gonna overthrow the evil person. And that is what I love so much about fantasy, because it's so hard to do that in real life. And so those are some things that I get worked up about on a daily basis. Now, this is not to say that I don't think anybody should have money. That's what people accuse me of. No, I think people are entitled to what they earn. That's not what I'm saying at all.
I hate it when people flip things like that to there's a word for it, but I can't, like some kind of I can't remember what it is.
It's a logical fallacy.
Logical fallacy. Thank you. It's some kind of logical fallacy. I can't remember what it's called. But
that is not. I am not saying that there should not be rich people. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that if people are working, because you always hear like, well, if they just worked harder, they could. No. Some of the hardest working people I know are dirt poor.
Oh yeah.
And so that makes me mad. Like, if you are working full time, like my wife and I, Christina and I, we want to have a family one day, but we both teach. And it is expensive, and it is just ridiculous that we are both working full time, and we can barely afford to live where we work because of, the cost of everything now. And that's crap. Like, we're professionals. She has a master's degree and I have a bachelor's, and we both excel at what we do. We are teachers, which you would think are an important job.
Of course. Yeah.
So,
You would think that. It's just crazy. Yeah, straw man arguments are the worst.
anyway, I'm sorry to derail your life.
No, it's not derailing. I think everyone's really getting fired up about this too. So that makes me excited. But I mean, it makes sense that we're fired up about it, Alan, because I mean, it's what's happening in our real world, but it also speaks to what we love in fantasy, because like you said, this is what the final empire is about. It's what the City Watch is about. It's a lot of the fantasy that we love the most is going to touch on some of these issues for sure. Excellent.
Yeah, I love that fantasy can do that. Like, it can deal with real world stuff, and I sometimes take views of characters, organizations in fantasy that I would not in the real world, because it's fiction. You know what I mean? Like, I sometimes in fantasy, sometimes I lean, like in Hyperion. I just had this discussion with Angela and Evie. Sometimes I'm on the Imperial side in fantasy. Sometimes, even though, like, in real life, I would never be behind, like, oh, that country's expanding and, creating client states, and I'd be totally against that in real life.
Oh, I saw that on your Instagram story. You said that you were kind of conflicted by the fact that you want to want to be a revolutionary, but then you also side on have part of you that sides on imperialism.
Well, that just comes from, like, my just fascination with the Roman Empire my entire life. It's just, I think empire as a theoretical concept is just fascinating. I think as a real world concept, I think it's horrible. I mean, it is. I mean, you oppress people and destroy their culture and, subsume them and that kind of stuff. And that is horrible. But at the same time, my mind can compartmentalize and be like, that's horrible. But it's also really interesting and that's why I like fantasy, because in fantasy, nobody's getting hurt in fantasy. It's all fictional.
That's actually one of the things I love about Malazan too, is it's kind of taking a critical eye at that. Like, there was a really cool epigraph in Reaper's Gale. This isn't a spoiler, but it kind of looks at these two extreme contrasts, and it's kind of like, I feel like it's sort of mocking straw man arguments in a way, because it's looking at sort of like the imperialism on the one hand, or an empire on the one hand, and then on the other hand, like a very individualistic, self-serving kind of capitalist culture, and just showing the flaws in both. And so it's not saying just because one model is bad, because that's what people do. They always do that. They always say, oh, we are communist then, or something. I hear people do that all the time. So
100%. Yeah. The thing is, like, I teach a Greek history course, and Matt right now is talking about people becoming political trolls and stuff. I teach a Greek history course, and the ancient historian Thucydides, who was a general in the Peloponnesian War, talks about, like, we don't look for nuance in anything. We don't try to moderate or find a way to work with people who disagree with us. Instead, Thucydides wrote, like, that fanatical devotion to a cause was the sign of a real man. Like, moderation meant that you were a coward. If you tried to see both sides of an issue, you were a coward, and they'd exile you from Athens. And it's just like, that's what our situation is now. If they don't agree with you, you turn you demonize, you straw man their argument and kill it. It's like, it's just like people who believe that there is a class discrepancy do not necessarily mean that no one should be able to sell their goods and services and make money for it. Like, the opposite of wanting people to be able to support themselves is not destroy the American economy and make everything a commune. Like, that is one view that people may have.
Yeah.
It is not the next step. And that's the problem. That's what I always have to tell my students. I'm like, guys, every Democrat in this class isn't trying to bring communist Russia and China to America. And guys, every Republican in this classroom is not a racist, bigoted, like, wannabe Nazi. Like, you guys have got to erase whatever you're hearing in your homes. That's not happening, guys. That's not everybody. if that's how you're viewing the opposition, you're already wrong. Like, we are human beings. So if we can just freaking talk to each other and look out for people's interests other than our own, perhaps, now if we're trying to maximize our own power, fame, wealth, then yeah, screw them. Let's turn them into monsters and dehumanize them. That's fine. But if you really want to advance the human race, just freaking talk to people, for the love of humanity.
Yeah. Well said, for sure. Yeah. And I love that. I think that's just bringing it back to fantasy. I think that's why I love fantasy so much, because we can explore these type of topics and ideas in a way that invites conversation and discussion, because it's, fantasy. It's not real. So I don't know. But of course, it can sort of mirror things too. So I don't know if that makes sense. All right. So catching up here in the chat.
Do we have other questions?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh my gosh.
Gregory LaPerche asked, what is the genre? And I must be said in the Allen voice. Can you say it for us?
Yeah. Genre.
Wait, do it again.
Genre.
I have to do it right. Genre. Okay. What is the genre of book you look forward to reading more of in the future?
You go ahead and take it.
So I'm trying to think about that. What is the genre? That's a good question. I mean, obviously.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm trying to find Alex Trebek going.
Alex Trebek to do it right. Yeah.
Cartoon genre, the TV genre, 1970s genre of film, the 60s musical genre.
I'm pretty sure that, because my mom watches Jeopardy, and I'm pretty sure that there was a point I've heard him say that and thought, what? Is that the way you're supposed to say it?
Watching Jeopardy, I've heard it so many times. I'm like, Alex, why do you say it like that? So I have a video that is literally an hour long. It's an hour-long video of just clips of Alex Trebek saying genre. So,
an hour long?
It's an hour long. It's just a super cut of a bunch of genres. So
yeah. So I guess to answer that question, I know Alan is on his mission to find the best of Flintlock fantasy. So I look forward to his recommendations on that, of course. I really struggle with urban fantasies. I don't know that that's a genre that I'm going to be exploring as much in. Of course, I love science fiction, and I know it feels like this is the year of science fiction. I feel like everybody's getting into science fiction lately. So I definitely look forward to reading more of that.
Yeah.
And I guess, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can put on the table there. Maybe a little bit of horror. I started to read a little bit of horror with my first Brahm book recently, and it was so good. It kind of shocked me how good it was. So maybe a little bit of horror, but I don't know, I'm a little squeamish too, and I don't like a lot of horror. I don't like a lot of the description again. So that's the best I can do. I know I definitely want to read more classical literature, because there are so many classics I have yet to read. And that's the best I could do about that for now, for that question.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see if there's another one.
This is false, Jake. That is not true. I do not want to get into that genre. For me, it's Flintlock fantasy. I just want to Flintlock fantasy, and then like there's an adjacent genre that is, steampunk, and then the genre that is like really, really low magic, that is kind of pre-industrial, like right on the edge of pre-industrial, kind of like KJ Parker is kind of right at there, where it's just like this sort of like post-Renaissance era where there's hardly any magic and everyone fences, and there's, they have, I guess they do have engines and stuff. So I guess it's right there, just kind of this industrial feel, really. So I found some good ones, like Blackwing was excellent, and Shadows of the Apt, I didn't realize was in this subgenre, and it has been fantastic. So yeah, Josh, I don't think the seminal work of steampunk's been written, like the one that is going to like explode the steampunk genre where that everyone's read. I don't think it's happened. Like right now, Promise of Blood and the Powder Mage trilogy is like the quintessential work of Flintlock currently, it's the most popular by far, even though it's not my favorite. But that's why I want and it's fine. Like I think Promise of Blood appeals to a lot of non-fantasy readers. I think a lot of people who just haven't read a ton of fantasy really, really like it, because I see it all the time on Twitter. And then I go look at their Goodreads and I'm like, oh, okay, you don't read a ton of fantasy. I get it. Like I think it's very accessible.
Yeah.
But I don't love it. So I'm trying to find other stuff that I can recommend to people who really, really want to get in it. You're reading Guns of the Dawn this month, right?
I am. I'm reading it right now. Yeah.
Where are you? Are you far away?
I am a little over 200 pages in, I think. So.
Do you like it, or are you avoiding talking about it because you hate it?
I don't hate it. I like it. I like it.
Are you in the swamp again yet? Are you in the swamp again yet? Or are you still in are you still at Grammarly?
Swamp.
Grammarly. Oh, you're in the swamp now? Okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. I think one thing I will say is I think that the back of the book, the blurb in the back, is spoilery. And so if anybody hasn't read the book yet, do not read the back of the book. Now, there are certain things you'll know right from the beginning when you start the book that are going to be obvious that will happen later on. But there's definitely one thing at the end of that blurb that I thought, well, now I know what's going to happen.
Kind of. Really?
Yeah.
I need to go read mine, or I'll look it up on Amazon and see.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure I know where the book is going to go, what direction it's going to go, and I could be surprised. So I'm excited to see if that happens.
I'm going to predict
one thing that I really like, that I really appreciate about this author, is that we actually get, I don't think this is spoilery to say, but we actually get a female friendship. And we never see that in fantasy. We never see strong female friendships. So I got excited to see that.
Oh, I see what you're talking about. I think just read and find out. Read and find out. Read and find out.
Yeah.
I can see how that could seem like it was really spoilery.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It feels like it. I'm like, I think I know what's going to happen.
Tchaikovsky often does things that I do not expect in the 3 books that I've read. Like you'll see. Yeah. I like Mr. Northway though. And I love Emily Marshwick. I love Emily as well. So I just really like the character. And I think he does a really good job with making the swamp feel like a character, which you'll know in the next 200 pages after you're in the swamp for bloody ever.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it though. I like the setting. I like the tone. I like the writing style. He has a very accessible writing style, but it still feels kind of like appropriate for that time.
Yeah.
And at the same time, he's very efficient. So I don't feel like he goes into too much description at all. That even though it reads very easy, like if I try to read fast at all, like one night I was trying to read a little fast because I only had so much time before going to bed. And I realized I couldn't do it because he's so efficient that you miss something important if you try to read it fast.
That's definitely true. Josh, I would say Shadow Campaigns is the other most popular one, and I think it's better than Powder Mage. But Guns of the Dawn, I think, is the best Flintlock standalone I've read. Shadows of the Apt should be the poster boy for this kind of like post-industrial genre. Shadows of the Apt is absolutely fantastic for military fantasy in that time period. Like, I did not realize I was in for such good military action like this.
Oh, that's exciting.
This series hits like so many of the things that I like. And then Silk Punk, the Grace of Kings books I want to read too.
Kirsty, that we were just talking about Guns of the Dawn because I'm reading that right now.
Can I go use the restroom, refill my drink, and then my wife is shopping for an oven and sent me pictures, and I need to weigh in on which one I want. So I'll be right back.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and look at the chat while Ellen is gone. Thank you all so much for joining, by the way. It is too bad about Powder Mage. I've only read the first book. I read that with Shelf Space last year, and it was a 2-star read for me. I didn't think it was boring. And there were so many interesting concepts in it, but I just thought the execution really fell flat for me. So I haven't continued for that reason. Trying to see if there's some other questions that we can get to, because I feel like we've answered most of these other questions. Oh, here's a couple of good ones. Let's see. Favorite fantasy creature? Well, I know that Alan doesn't. We could ask him when he comes back, but I know that Alan's not really a big fantasy creature kind of person. But for me, that's a hard question. Actually, I really like Lord of the Rings, so I love elves and dwarves and hobbits. And let's see what else. Just looking more at these questions. Okay. And by the way, if you all have a book, any book recommendations with a good, strong female friendship in it that's adult fantasy, I would love to hear from you, or just adult in general. Because I think the young adult does that really well, but I don't really see that happening much with well, young adult does that well, but I don't see that happening as much with adult. Favorite fantasy creature, good person. Yes. Yes, I love elves. Elves are great. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's hard for me to choose though for favorite fantasy creature because, like, as far as why, I don't know. I just love all types. I think they're cool. And let's see. Somebody else asked me hobbies outside of reading. I already mentioned that in my last video, but I love to do art. I love to go hiking. Let's see. Trying to think of this. If there's anything else here. I think we answered a good portion of these questions. Oh, I want to ask Alan the question that Bookish Drummer asked. Grandma Joe. Well, thank you so much. Alan, what's a movie that you have seen? What is a movie you've seen the most amount of times in your life?
If we are not counting one of the aforementioned live action Disney movies, the musical 1776, which is incredible. Remember the Titans and The Emperor's Club, starring Kevin Kline. Those are the three movies that I watch really most often currently.
Oh, wow. Okay. I haven't seen any of those.
Remember the Titans is, for some reason, never having been good at sports, I really love inspirational sports movies. And I also really love Denzel Washington. So I love Remember the Titans. 1776 is a musical about the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And it stars William Daniels, who most people know as Mr. Feeney, but I knew him as John Adams first. Mr. Feeney from Boy Meets World.
Yes, okay, I remember that.
But he was in the Broadway and in the movie as John Adams, which is the main character from that musical. And I love it. I love it so much. I had to watch it in my high school AP US history class for bonus points. And I watched it and I loved it. And I bought it. And I've worn out a VHS copy and my original non-extended cut DVD copy from watching it so much. Yeah. And then Emperor's Club is about integrity at a boarding school, a private boarding school for boys with a classics teacher. And it's about like academic integrity and about how people can people change between teenagers and adults and just what a teacher's purpose is. And it's a very, it's a movie about Kevin Kline playing a classics teacher at an all boys boarding school. For me, it's a better Dead Poet Society.
Oh, okay. I remember Dead Poet Society. The one you're describing though sounds familiar though, so I might have glimpses of memories of that somewhere.
It's based on a short story called The Palace Thief. Oh, okay. But I don't love Dead Poet Society, mostly because it's about poems and not about the classics.
Yeah. For me, I think the movie I watched the most, and this will probably not be a surprise considering how much I love time travel, is Back to the Future.
Nice.
Partly because of my older brothers. I have two older brothers, and they had that movie. They can quote that entire movie from the very beginning to the end.
Nice.
They can quote that entire thing, but we watched it so many times. That And I feel like other movies that shaped me as a kid were Disney's Sword in the Stone. Always will be a favorite of mine.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's a great movie. That's a great one also.
So good. I think actually that was the movie that made me fall in love with the mentor trope, but it also traumatized me because the scene where Merlin gets mad at Wart.
Blow me to Bermuda.
It just made me so, I don't know, it really emotionally got to me when I was a kid. And,
sorry.
The squirrel scene too, where he's like, I got a boy.
Yeah.
Or I got a squirrel on the boy.
Yeah.
And she's just devastated. I love that movie so much though. That one is very, very close to my heart.
I have always liked the more responsible characters who don't like foolishness in cartoons. So Rabbit was my favorite of the Winnie the Pooh crew because everyone hated Rabbit because he's mean to Tigger. It's like Tigger's destroying his garden for no reason other than he is being insane. And then in Sword in the Stone, my favorite was Archimedes.
Yes.
What? Oh, pig feathers. I love Archimedes trying to be like, why are we doing this? So I was a huge Archimedes fan back then. That's a great movie, though. That's a great.
That movie.
One of the best older ones for sure.
Especially just the whole arc, the whole story of Wart. I like it that his name is named Wart. He goes, King Arthur, and just being this sort of guy that doesn't believe himself. And then he pulls out the sword at the end. I just love that. I just love that whole entire story so much. So it's very, very important to me personally.
Do you do audiobooks?
I do. Oh, I wanted to ask you about that actually. Yeah. So, sort of. Okay. It really depends to me on the narrator, the type of book, and the genre. But I have been kind of off and on with audiobooks lately. I go through phases too, where sometimes I'm in the mood for an audiobook, and sometimes I just really struggle to get through them.
Yeah.
And with fantasy, especially adult fantasy, it could be so difficult. But I heard that you say that you actually started the Bernard Cornwell series, right?
I'm on the third book, and the first book took me almost a month to get through. The second book took me less than 3 weeks, and I'm already 7 hours into the third book because it's like when I could be reading or doing something else, I'm literally listening to it because Jonathan Keeble is such an incredible narrator for this, and it is such a good story. I don't like Arthurian retellings. I don't like the Arthur Legend. Sword in the Stone, and before this was the only one I liked because I've read Miss Avalon, I've read Once a Future King. I have seen the old Merlin show with Sam Neill as Merlin, not the new one where they're young, even though Charmaine wants me to watch it. I don't like the King Arthur story. I just don't. But this is so good, Joanna, and it's historical fiction. So it's
I'm gonna check it out. Yeah.
It's easy to listen to. And Sarah from Sarah Reads, I was almost done with the first book on audio, and she was reading it. She was reading it, like physically reading it. And then when she finished it, she's like, you know what? I think I'm gonna, because she wanted to continue after it ended. And she's like, well, I got too much to read. So she switched to audio, and then she just binged. She's finished already. I'm not done. She just binged the next 2 books on audio, and she agrees. Like the audio of these books is so good. It's so good. And if you like Arthur stuff, it is unlike anything I have ever read about Arthur. And Merlin in this acts just like Merlin in the Sword in the Stone thing. Like he thinks everyone's dumber than he is. And he has the best voice. He's like, oh, Devil. Oh, you're there. Oh, you're such an emotional wreck, Devil. Oh, get out. I saved you because I thought you'd be useful, Devil. Like Merlin is just so rude to everyone, as you would expect. And he's just brilliant. And you just know that he doesn't have time for all this foolishness. The guy does he does Merlin so well. And all the voices, he is so good. So good.
Oh, I'm definitely going to check it out. Yeah. There's nothing like a good narrator. I was actually listening to the Dark Tower series audiobooks, which if you ever reread the Dark Tower, the audiobook narrator for that, he's passed on now, Frank Mueller, and I think he
Oh,
did not finish the last couple because he died before they were finished. But he is incredible, like mind-blowingly good. But by the third book, I felt like I needed to see the book. Like I still need, like I couldn't follow along with just
mhm.
listening to it. Yeah, so I don't know if it's, so is it, does it get heavy into magic or anything like that? Because when it starts getting into abstract concepts, I just have to read things.
Not at all. It
Okay.
is Merlin's a druid, and so there is or isn't, like, you never know. Like, is Merlin just a trickster, or like do the druids have real power? It seems like they do, but no, not at all. It's very, very low, kind of in the background magic. They do discuss it a lot. There's a lot of stuff discussing about the old gods of Britain versus the Roman gods, and then versus the Christians who the Romans brought over. And so there's this big, like, that's one of the main, like, conflicts, is and then they got the Saxons, which are invading. And so there's no abstract stuff at all it's going to do is like help you through the parts where, because Cornwell can be very descriptive, so it'll help you through the, like, really descriptive parts, and it'll pronounce all the freaking Welsh names for you. Like, there's a guy named Gorfyddyd. It's spelled Gorfyddyd. That is how it's spelled. Gorfyddyd. No, it's pronounced Gorfyddyd. But I would never have known that. And Excalibur's real name, never know how to pronounce it. Sarah was like, oh, so this is how you pronounce all of his names. Like, the main character is spelled Derfel. So you would pronounce it Durfel, but it's Derval. That's how it's pronounced. So, yeah, I know I should, Philip. That's my bad. So, yeah. So it does nothing but enhance the book, and that's really why I think I struggle with audio. Is I'm worried that audio will decrease my experience with the text.
Yeah.
But I think this one specifically, I think it increases because I went back and read a scene that was awesome in the audio, and I thought it was better in the audio than it was on the page.
Honestly, I did not used to be an audiobook believer at all. The first time I ever heard an audiobook, it was the Harry Potter series. And I had already read all the books, but my sister was listening to them on audio when we were on a road trip. And I kept falling asleep, and I hated it. I just hated it. I thought, this is horrible. I can't stand this person doing all the voices. I just couldn't stand it. And sorry if that's an unpopular opinion, because I know a lot of people love Harry Potter on audio. But I wasn't a big audiobook believer at all for many years, and I thought my imagination is way better. And then the book that sold me was The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman, narrated by Neil Gaiman. I got the CDs of it from my library because I didn't know about things like Audible and Scribd at the time and things like that. And so I listened to it whenever I would drive to work. This was just a couple of years ago, by the way. That's how, like, behind I am on times.
Yeah.
And I wanted to drive more and more every time I listened to it, because Neil Gaiman's voice, it just, and the way the story is told too, like, I felt completely swept away. It was so beautiful. I was convinced after that book that a lot of people are agreeing with me here. I was convinced after that book that there is no way I could love that book more if I read it with my eyes.
Yeah,
like, there's no way.
That's literally where I am. Literally where I am. Jonathan Keeble is just so fantastic. His voices are distinctive. Some of them are annoying, like, because, he's got to do some female voices, and when they talk for a long time, like, especially there's Merlin's apprentice is an Irish girl, and her voice just it's you'll see. But it's just exceptional, and I can't imagine having enjoyed it the same when reading it. And it also frees up. It utilizes my commute, because I have a back and forth. It's close to an hour, maybe 45-minute commute total every day, and I can use that I don't have to, and I can read another book. I wish, because he does the Last Kingdom books, also the Saxon series of Cornwell's, but he doesn't do the sharp ones, and it makes me so sad, because I don't actually like the narrator that does the sharp ones, and so I wish that it was him, so I could keep reading the sharp books as well. but it's just like a fantastic narrator. I also was like you, didn't believe in audiobooks, but now I'm reading reading My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier, who wrote Rebecca.
Yes.
And I wasn't going to be able to read it, but then I saw Jonathan Pryce, who is an actor who I love.
Oh, that's a familiar name. Yeah.
He's Elizabeth Swann's dad in the Pirate of Caribbean movies.
Oh.
I love Jonathan Pryce. He was Fagin in the revival of Oliver. He's a great actor. He narrates it, and I'm like, after this, that's what I'm going to read on audio. That's what I'm going to read on audio, and so I can join. Same thing with Count of Monte Cristo. I'm never going to have the time to read 1,500 pages of Alexander Dumas, like unabridged, but I've heard nothing but amazing things about the Count of Monte Cristo audiobook. So I'm going to, it's something like 51 hours. And so it's really helping me to be able to read books that I would struggle with to read in person. So, or physically. And so yeah. But like, fantasy books where a lot's happening and there's a lot of like terms I need to know and stuff. My mind, it just wanders too much.
I am so impressed with people who can, like, for example, Brittany from Books with Brittany. I know she listened to the last few Malazan books on audio, and I
have no idea how.
I tried to listen to Malazan on audio, and I cannot. I have to see the words. Like, it's just my brain can't handle it. But yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, it really depends on the book. I feel like audiobook gives me slightly less understanding of the text sometimes. That helps motivate me to keep reading a book. Yeah. And like that's the nice thing about audiobooks is they can sometimes help you keep going in a way. Like it's easier, I think, for I don't know, to keep going if you're listening to something.
Yeah, completely agree. But the thing is, when it's a historical fiction about like, Britain, I know what Britain is, like it's okay if I understand
it's in our world.
Slightly less of it. Exactly. Which is why I think it's much harder for me on fantasy than something that
fantasy is so hard for me. I'm actually right now trying to listen to Dune Messiah on audio because everybody keeps saying that the Dune books are great audiobook productions.
Yeah.
And I can't do it. Yeah. I'm about to give up because I can't take it in. Like I just can't do it.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have good listening skills too. Like I feel like if I listen to a video, I can capture what everybody is saying. I feel like I'm good. I'm a good listener. But when it comes to audiobooks, for whatever reason, I just don't have. I think it really is a skill that you kind of develop or something. Yeah. I just don't think I have quite the skill yet. Yeah, because I know a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people can listen to Malazan on audio and do an amazing job with it. But it really depends on the audiobook and the narrator for sure. And I agree, like genres like memoirs, Charmaine was saying earlier, thrillers. Yes, those are fantastic. Michelle Obama's Becoming, which is her memoir, she narrates it herself.
Oh, she does it? That's cool.
That is just one of the best memoirs. It's probably my favorite ever. It just was unbelievable. But it's another one of those where I don't feel like I would have liked it as much if I had read it with my eyes.
Yeah.
But listening to her say it was just such an amazing experience.
My wife very badly wants me to try to break into the audiobook industry. She wants me to record audio.
You would be amazing at that. Yes.
So that's what my wife says. But I mean, it is. I think it is so much harder than any of us think. I'm an actor. Like I act on stage, but even then, like it is a completely different skill. I would not be opposed to that, but I would need to take like classes and stuff, and like because it is.
No. I just listened to an interview with Joe Abercrombie and
Stephen Pacey.
Yeah, it's over on
Jay.
Jay's channel. Thank you. Oh my goodness, like that was such a fascinating interview. It was so good.
Yeah.
But listening to Stephen Pacey, by the way, is just. He is incredible.
He is the unanimous, every single person who has listened to The First Law on audio. I have never heard one person not say that it elevated their experience with those books. Not one. So,
yes. Well, but the thing is with the audiobooks is that I mean, they explained in that interview, Abercrombie explains that he gave it seems like he gave Stephen Pacey a lot of autonomy, which rightfully so, because Stephen Pacey just brought it to life perfectly. And then Stephen Pacey gave a lot of the credit to Abercrombie because he's a huge fan. And he explained how everything is there in the text. That was very easy for him, but it was hard too. He explained it's a lot of work to be a good audiobook narrator, a lot of work. And he's a professional actor. He put in tons and tons and tons of hours to doing that, doing the narration for all those books. But at the same time, I'm a little bit nervous when it comes to audiobooks sometimes. Because there was a Brandon Sanderson book, and I could be wrong about these details, so everyone, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I could have sworn I listened to Warbreaker. So for whatever reason, I can listen to Sanderson on audio, and I don't have a problem with it. I haven't listened to a lot of it on audio, just a couple of books. I listened to Warbreaker on audio, and I loved that audiobook production. I thought it was excellent. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I laughed several times. But then I heard later on from Brandon Sanderson that the audiobook had to be redone because the narrator didn't quite get one of the characters' voices right. And then it made me feel like, oh, did I not experience the book right then?
So the one you listened to had to be redone, or it was redone by the time you listened to it?
That was the impression I got. That was the impression I got. It was a female voice. And it's not a typical narrator. I can't remember her name. But somebody can correct me if I'm wrong about that detail. I've been hesitant to say anything about it because I'm I'm not sure. So I might be wrong about that detail, but I'm pretty sure it was the one I listened to that he was saying didn't quite get the voice right for one of the characters. And it just made me feel like, maybe I didn't read it right then.
I think one of the hardest things to do as a guy, and vice versa as a girl, is to do the opposite sex voices without, I think that's hard. I think that is a challenge on the ones where it's a solo narrator. A lot of the Sanderson ones have Kramer and Kate, right? Is that who they are?
Yes. Those weren't. It wasn't Kate. It wasn't Kate who did. I don't think it was her that did it. I think it was a woman. Gotcha.
But in the Arthur trilogy, Jonathan Keeble has to do the girl voices too. And I think he doesn't. I think it is a stellar job because I think if he didn't, there are so many female characters in that book, in those books, that you couldn't do it. And so I think that's a big skill right now. I really want to, a lot of KJ Parker's older books, the folding, there's no audio at all. I just want to be like, hey, KJ Parker, you want to buy me some Taco Bell and I'll record the folding knife for you or something? I'm just how are those not have audio? They would, considering how much it talks about the freaking economy and, banking, you need to put those suckers on audio, bro. He has some for the more recent ones, 16 Ways to Defend a Walled City, which I think is his most accessible book. But I mean, I am afraid of many things. And it takes me a long time to engage in an endeavor that will change my status quo of my life. Because, what if the future is worse? Or what if I suck at something? Or what if I fail miserably? So, I'm looking into it because I would I like talking, I think that, but
you should do it. That would be fantastic. I think you should do it.
I don't want people to think I'm one of these stupid people. It's just oh yeah, I can do that. That's easy. But I think I would enjoy doing that a lot.
You have such good voices. I love it when you.
That comes from 30 years of playing Dungeons and Dragons and being a dungeon master, because the worst thing when playing Dungeons and Dragons is as a dungeon master having to be okay, and then this guy says, and then this guy says, and then this guy says. It's so much easier if you just freaking stick a voice on somebody, and that way they know who's talking by their voice. And so I've just been trying to do voices for ever just to save myself time in D&D.
Yeah, I just want to respond really quickly because I know Charmaine said earlier that I think even when you read a book physically, you could still read a character differently. And it's funny because Murphy Napier did a video recently about listening to books versus reading them with your eyes, and about the different research studies that have been done on different parts of your brain that are utilized through those different experiences, and how they're very, very similar, that there's maybe just a little bit higher comprehension when you read with your eyes than when you listen to an audiobook, but it's very like negligible. And it was really interesting, but I did bring that up in the comments. I said, I love audiobooks, but I get nervous about them because there was a book I listened to. I didn't refer to the specific book in that comment, but I said there was a book I listened to that I later heard the author say that the narrator didn't quite get one of the voices right. And so I didn't feel good about it. And other people commented on my comment, and they said basically what Charmaine said. They said, well, if you read it with your eyes, you could still read differently than what the author intended. And I totally agree with that. I think the only counter argument I would have to that is that with an audiobook narrator, you don't really get much. It's fixed for you, right? I mean, like you don't really, I don't know. Like if you read it with your eyes, you could read it one way and then go back and possibly, it's up to you. In other words, it's like you're kind of having your experience of it. Whether
I mean, you're
it's somebody else reading it.
Yeah.
Then you never know if you would have read it differently. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
I mean, that's true. I mean, you do get the narrator's interpretation of what is happening. That's true. But I mean, that doesn't mean it wouldn't change on reread. Like I read trying to desperately get Hyperion done in time. I read some of it. I listened to some of it on audio, and then I went back and read those same kind of, and I was like, well, I don't like the way the audio did it, and so I just overwrote it in my head. You know what I mean? So I think there's still some room for interpretation when you go back and read it. Certainly not when you're listening to it. That's the only interpretation you get when you're just listening to it. So hold on. Crap. Oh, Terry Pratchett. Terry Pratchett is someone that I would not recommend audio, and that's because Terry Pratchett has so many visual sight gags with like words that homophones, with words that are pronounced the same but spelled differently. And that's like, there's a joke in one of them where the guy says it's the head of a Marine Corps, spelled CORPS, and he's like, we're gonna live fast, die young, and leave a good-looking core, CORPS. But everyone who knows the phrase "live fast, die young, and leave a good-looking corpse," you will not, like, if that was spoken, you don't get the joke. But looking at it, you see the word looks like corpse. And Pratchett has so much of that you would miss it if you. I just think it would be a lesser experience listening to a Discworld book than reading it because of Pratchett's masterful command of the English. Have you read Guards?
Yeah, I read it. I read it with Gregory LaPerche and Joanna Sousa.
Oh, that's right. You had a live show with it.
Yes, I really enjoyed it. I really want to read on in that series for sure.
Joanna,
but I read it with my eyes. I read it on Kindle, and I don't recommend that because it was like a little generic Kindle, and I had to I couldn't get access to the footnotes. And
female friendships coming in the next book.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Because that was one of my minor criticisms in my review. Was I just felt like I wanted a few more female characters. I did love Lady Sybil, but
those were all introduced in the next book.
That's what I've heard. I've heard that definitely improves as you go on. And then everybody kept saying, read Weird Sisters and read.
Weird Sisters is one of my favorite Discworld books, absolutely. But so Men at Arms, the next Guards book, it's kind of Vimes light. It's kind of the Old Watch light as they introduce four new Watchmen. So some new support characters come into play, and then there's even more introduced in Feet of Clay. And so it definitely expands, and that's why I think Night Watch is my favorite of them after Guards, because Night Watch is almost purely Samuel Vimes, who is my hero, as you know.
Let's see. Yes. I love your crow. Have I already do crow?
I'm sure you have. It's yeah, I'm certain you have. If I had my book around, I would do it. He's freaking Krupp and Pust are. I asked Philip last night how many Krupp and Pust characters he had in his trilogy that he's writing or that he's written, and he said none, and that made me very pleased.
That's so funny. Oh my goodness, yeah. Yeah, so a lot of people are very encouraging of you by
I
the way.
appreciate that, guys. I appreciate that.
Yeah, if you need any encouragement, let me know. I actually, yeah, let's see. Alan, yes, this is true. This is true.
Yeah, that is the biggest problem I have with audiobooks is that I have trouble stopping and taking notes the way I do when I physically read.
Oh, yes. And actually that's something I found with myself too, is I feel much less comfortable giving a review if I listen to an audiobook than if I read with my eyes.
Mhm.
Now I have done both, like immersion reading, like that's what I did with the first Law trilogy, for example, is I listened and read with my eyes, and then I was able to tab and take notes and stuff. But I know people can't do that, and that drives them crazy. But for me, it drives me crazy if I can't see things, like
Yeah.
be able to talk about it. I don't know why. Like it's just makes me so insecure.
I mean, Discworld read by John Cleese is about the best audio.
Oh, I love John Cleese.
Same. I mean, that's about the best you could, but you still, I mean, you just can't get those visual gags without it.
I love John Cleese. Yeah.
John Cleese is fantastic. I am also a big fan of John Cleese.
That's what I've heard.
Heard that as well. I've heard that as well.
I've heard.
I like Stephen Fry.
Lady
Lady Sybil's incredible. And one of my issues with Lady Sybil is that not with Lady Sybil is that there are many sins of the Watch BBC show, but the main one is that they assume that a large woman, because she's a big, Pratchett describes her as one of the Wagnerian opera women, like, you know.
Yeah, dramatic soprano. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So she's a big lady, and her strength is in her compassion for these lost things.
Little sickly dragons.
Yeah, and not just them, the Watch. That's why she takes the Watch in, because they're just these pitiful creatures without a place. And she stands in the way of the dragon. She won't let, she will not let any of these things come to harm. That's her strength. And in the freaking TV show, they make her skinny, and they have her say the line to Vimes, "If you want power, you have to take it." And it's like, that is, and she's BA wielding a gun or a sword or a crossbow bolt. That is not who Lady Sybil is. Lady Sybil would never encourage violence ever.
Yeah,
and it's just, they don't even understand. They have no idea what makes people like Lady Sybil. None. They're just like, oh, look at this awesome female character we have. No. She was awesome the way she was. Like, Sybil is a fantastic character.
Yeah.
Makes me so mad.
Yeah. So, yes, Philip, says he'll add a few group characters for you. Don't do that. And then you can do the audiobooks for Philip's story.
No, do not do that. Crap. Oh my gosh, I already did enough of that in that vlog. You just have to like pull your hair down and yeah, I agree, Yuri. Yeah, no Discworld fan likes that show.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I've heard it's very unpopular.
Pratchett's daughter hates it, so that's enough for me. Pratchett's daughter and Neil Gaiman. So there you go. Neil Gaiman's like, I mean, I guess you can call it Discworld the same way you could call, Batman if he was still wearing like a bright yellow rain jacket. That's fine, I guess. Still Batman.
Yeah, that's crazy. I've heard great things though about Good Omens, that adaptation. Speaking of Pratchett and Gaiman, I haven't seen it though.
I already answered this. It's 1776, the musical by. That's my favorite history retelling movie. Other than that, King of Heaven's good. I like King of Heaven. I haven't seen King of Heaven in forever. What else? What other history retelling movie do I like? It's not 300. I don't know. I don't watch enough history movies. I don't think I should. I like the Sharp BBC series with Sean Bean. But yeah, King of Heaven is pretty good. But 1776 is my favorite.
Here's a question from Pete, who I don't think is here in the chat, but he asked, if you could hug a Malazan character, who would you hug?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
I mean, I have to well, I can't ask a question. Because it just depends. It depends on the circumstances. Depending on the circumstances of things, I mean, everyone's going to pick beak. So depending
Yes,
on
that was the first answer that came to my
but
head.
other than beak, who would I hug? Who needs a hug? Who does need a hug?
Yes, it's a hug.
Austin would stab you when you would hug her. As would Hemrick and Bodden. Colthane needs a hug. I don't know. You go first. Who was you?
Amanda Rake.
Amanda Rake. Oh my gosh, Rake. Freaking Rake.
I'm just being silly with that. But, yeah. I mean, beak was the obvious answer to me.
Fiddler needs a hug. Covian needs a hug.
Yeah, Fiddler does need a hug.
You know what? You know who I'd hug? Bug. I bet Bug doesn't get a lot of hugs. I would hug Bug. I love Bug. Who is my favorite in those?
That would be great.
Some of my favorite characters in those. No, you know I'd hug Tavor. Like Tavor needs a hug. Like, yeah, I'd hug Tavor.
A bug hug.
Bug does need one. He gets put upon and told to, pluck the chickens.
Yeah.
It's so weird that Erickson has said he's never read Discworld. I don't even understand that because he
hasn't. I didn't know he hasn't.
But the dialogue between Bug and T-Hole, it's Discworldian. Like that's the same kind of interaction that I love from Pratchett. So it's just cool.
I feel like everybody in Malazan needs a hug, to be honest with you. When I think of all the characters,
who I wouldn't hug? Empress Lysine. I wouldn't hug her. Even if she asked me, I'd say no. You messed it up.
Yeah.
I'm mad at you.
I kind of wanted to. I would hug Absalar maybe too.
Yeah, Absalar needs a hug. Crocus needs a hug.
Serempedic. Yeah. Everybody needs a hug.
I'd hug. I bet Karsa gives good hugs.
Oh my.
I bet Karsa gives good hugs. I'd hug Karsa. I'd be like, Karsa, come on, come on, big guy. Come on, big guy. I bet he gives good hugs.
He'll be like, I will split you in half.
He'd turn and be like, witness. And then he would just give me one of those big things. And then he would leave.
Witness, and then he would leave, yeah. I love Karsa's character so much.
Yeah.
No,
he does not. I wouldn't hug Pust either.
No, probably not.
Hate Pust. Puss.
Yeah, that was a hilarious answer. That's good. I think I'm trying to see. Oh, here's another question. How would you fare in an apocalypse scenario? Would you be quite resilient or completely lost? I'll just answer for myself first. Immediately when I read that, I thought I would be completely lost.
Oh, are we being honest?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Are we not supposed to be honest?
Oh, fine. No, first one dead. Absolutely. I would 100% welcome the people who are coming to my building, and then they would kill me and take my stuff. Done. I would not fare well in prison, in an apocalyptic setting. Though it is possible I could worm my way into the group of efficient people. So I could try to ply my I don't know. I would try to find a group that was I would go find my dad, who is a woodsman, and then just hang out with him. And so it would depend. I would survive if I had people around me. If it was just me, dead.
Yeah. I would just go find my husband because he's pretty resilient. He can figure things out. He is like the best problem solver. Like it just blows my mind the way he can problem solve, and he's creating a catio right now for our poor cat who's miserable. But yeah,
the problem is that I have a very, very underdeveloped palate as far as eating is concerned. I have very few things that I can eat.
Oh, I think I heard you say that before. Like you eat vegetables, is that right? Yeah.
So when the apocalypse comes, I'm dead because I won't be able to eat anything. Like I will not, I'll just die from starvation because hey, we have these bugs for dinner. And, okay, dead. Guess I'm dead. So, ugh.
It's like that. Philip, have you ever seen that Twilight episode where the guy, there's some sort of big atomic bomb explosion or something, and the guy's in the safe, and all he wants to do is read. And then he gets out of the safe, and then he finds that the whole world's been destroyed. But then he discovers the library, and he's so happy. He's like, I could spend the rest of my life reading. And then suddenly his glasses break.
That's
So
horrible.
depressing.
I would steal Philip's glasses in the middle of the night and trade them for buffalo wings.
That's so mean.
Look.
This
I don't know what to tell you.
is awful. So
Yeah, I would hope so, Charmaine. I would hope that imminent starvation would make me eat bugs. But so yeah, sorry, Philip. There can only be one historian in the post-apocalyptic group, and I need you to be of less value.
Oh my goodness.
So I have to.
So first we had Revolutionary Alan earlier in this chat, and
This is
now
survival Alan.
villain survival Alan is coming out.
As soon as I see a group more likely to survive, I betray everybody in my group and take their stuff and go to the bigger one.
Yeah.
I would not do that. I would not do that. I would not betray Philip. I would unite with Philip.
Good. We're glad to hear it. It would be an awful apocalypse indeed if both of you or one of you were gone.
No, Philip, no, it's not Tyrant Alan. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
What was it that so you said that you have a very limited diet, is what you were saying?
Yeah.
So the bugs wouldn't be an option.
I mean, I would hope if I was starving, I would eat bugs, but I don't know how I would do it. Like the problem is I have a physical reaction. Like I'll just start vomiting.
Oh, yeah.
So
it would be a mess. Yeah. And I think that just about wraps up all of the questions. The only one is a weird one about pirates or ninjas. I guess we can answer that really quickly. If you could choose between pirates and ninjas, what would you choose?
I think I like pirates better. I do love ninja. I do love ninjas because I love Japan and Japanese culture and history and stuff. So I like ninjas, but I think pirates are a lot of people say I hear a lot of people don't like books that take place on boats. Like they don't
I like them.
Yeah, I love naval stuff. Like I love old-timey boats. So I'm all about ships and stuff like that. So I like pirates. Ninjas are just they're really glorified assassins, really. And we know how I feel about assassins. So yeah, pirates definitely. Plus One Piece is my favorite anime, and that's because it's pirates, really. So yeah, pirates.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I guess I think the same for me too. And that was a question by my friend Jeremy. I don't think he's in the chat at all, but he always asks these interesting questions that like, okay, what does that mean? Is that supposed to mean something about me? I think that's the point there. Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather read a book about pirates than a book about ninjas, really, because ninjas are just always hiding in the shadows and, assassinating, or unless they're the main character, in which case they can't assassinate anybody because then the story's over.
Yeah. So. I have a book that's over on my bookshelf there called The Bone Ships that I've been really wanting to read. And I keep on seeing posts about it on Twitter because I just completed a trilogy now. And I know Abby hated it, but
yeah, like 4 of my friends DNF'd that book at the same time. So that has.
I still want to try it. Even though people hate it, I still want to try it. Sometimes you never know. Sometimes you will.
Oh, absolutely.
That people will hate. So I still might try it. Yeah. Oh, wow. The chat is going wild about pirates. Okay.
Ninja pirates. Yeah, I've heard that, Jake.
I need to read on
skies.
Yeah. And by the way, Jake was saying that the audiobooks for the Gentleman Bastard series are phenomenal too.
Very good. Very cool.
Yeah. I've heard other people say that too. Very nice. Treasure Island. Yeah, I don't want to read that too, Matt. I've been really wanting to get to that one. All right. Well, I guess I'm out of questions, and we've been going on now for about 2 hours and 18 minutes. I know you probably have things. Let's see. Oh, I just got the bone chips. Let me know what you think. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that one soon. I have to get through the rest of the Malazan Book of the Fallen series this year and some other books that I've added to my plate too. But I don't know. I keep thinking about it. I keep wanting to pick it up. So yeah, I will definitely do a review of that book though when I do pick it up for sure.
Are you currently reading Soul of the Hounds?
No, I'm reading Guns of the Dawn.
Oh,
So,
that's right. That's right.
yeah. So I'm more of a one book at a time,
Same.
one book and one audiobook at a time kind of person.
Same.
So what are you reading right now, by the way?
I'm reading Sharps, another KJ Parker book that is just, I love it. I love it. But there's 3 pages about how the bank ended up acquiring one of the Church of the Invincible Sons temples because they defaulted on a loan that was made during the war and they lost their ships as collateral. And so it ended up, and they still let them rent it. It's just economic stuff that is, I know some people would hate, but it's absolutely, it's just political scheming upon scheming upon scheming.
If I can understand it, I tend to like it. I think if I can't understand it, then
it is understandable. It's not confusing. It's just some people would find that boring, and I don't. I think it's absolutely fascinating. It's good. KJ Parker is definitely, like, I love him, but he is not someone I would recommend for everybody. But yeah, that's what I'm reading, Sharps.
Yeah, but then that could be kind of cool though, because then it can make you like find economic stuff more interesting in real life too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think that would be cool. Like I almost want to read that just because.
You should read The Folding Knife. I strongly recommend it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so maybe I need to add that to my list too.
Yeah.
How many books I need to read thanks to Alan, right? That's the story of everyone's life here. So
yeah, I think that's all our problems. Like everyone always has, is touting books that we're like, oh, I got to read that now,
Yeah. Oh, so Caitlin, did you read it? Did you read You Unhauled the Bone Chips? Did you try it? I'm so curious. Please let me know. Yeah, I still think I'm going to try it. Even though everybody on earth is DNFing this book and getting rid of it, I still want to give it a try. I saw it, like I said, I've been seeing it on Twitter, and actually a lot of authors have been retweeting it too and promoting it. So I'm curious. I'm curious about it still. In fact, I even saw Steven Erickson retweet about it. So
oh, really?
I did, but I know you never know if that's just somebody being supportive of another person, that kind of thing.
Yeah, Master Commander's good stuff.
Yeah, but I am going to start Toll the Hounds this month, by the way. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish The Guns of the Dawn, and then I'm probably going to pick up on ebook Dune Messiah and try to read it that way, because the audiobook, like I said, it's just I just don't think I can make it work.
Yeah, I got you.
And it's short too. That's actually a short one, so I got excited about that.
Yeah, I always get excited about short books.
Yes, definitely. And then I'm going to pick up Toll the Hounds.
Nice. And you will like Toll the Hounds. Everybody does. It's me and Benghis Khan are we're the holdouts.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, I'm just trying to go in with an open mind and just see what I think. It's interesting. I think I put on your Discord that got 100 pages in. Well, that's a good chunk to know. I think 100 pages should tell you whether a book is worthwhile or not.
Yeah.
For me, I try to give it 100 pages with fantasy, with adult fantasy, and about 50 pages with YA fantasy for me to know if a book is for me or not. So, yeah. Yeah, so, that's good. Okay, thanks for all the different kinds of opinions here. So, yeah, I think I mentioned it on your Discord, but I'm playing with the idea of when I finish Malazan Book of the Fallen, talking through the series and having viewers rank the books for me or tell me what they think how the books rank for me.
I saw that. That'd be cool.
I just can't figure it out. Like they just all, I don't know. I just can't rank books very well or figure out how I feel. I'm like all over the place with my feelings on things.
Yes.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah, Bone Hunters is excellent. That's my favorite.
Yes, I love the Bone Hunters. Yeah, that is your favorite. Okay.
Yeah.
Have you done a ranking video? Because everybody asks about that, like Malazan ranking videos.
No, because I don't want a bunch of people to hit thumbs down on my video.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I should. I mean, because my opinion is well known. Why haven't I done a Malazan one? I don't know. I guess I just didn't even think about it until right now. I'm gonna make a note. I'll put one out so that because guess what? If you thumbs down my video, that's called, YouTube calls that engagement. So you go right ahead and you thumbs down. Yeah, I'll have I'm the refuge for the few Toll the Hounds people who don't like it, but I like Dust of Dreams better than most people do too. So
yeah, I don't know. So I guess I'm really curious to see what I'll think about him. But yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to it though. Excited to get back into it.
I want to read The God Is Not Willing this year, but I'm not sure if I'm going to get to it. I'm going to try though.
Yeah, I really wanted to read that. Brittany talked to me about Buddy reading that with her, but I don't think I can read that until I'm finished with the
cannot. You cannot.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I've heard various things though, so I'll just wait for that. That's fine. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm very excited though, because I think once I'm finished with the 10, then my plan is for next year to get into some other series. I'm definitely prioritizing the Realm of the Elderlings.
Yeah.
But I really want to get into the Long Price Quartet. I own Senlin Ascends though, so I might as well get started on that. Saw some of your interview video on your channel for that.
So nice. Josiah Bancroft is so nice. He was such a kind guy.
He seems so nice.
Yeah, he was.
Wonderful. Yeah. Memories of Ice is so good. Yes.
Absolutely. Are you gonna read the novels of the Malazan Empire?
I'm probably not going to read them right away, but I definitely intend to.
I want you to read Return of the Crimson Guard. I just want you. When you get to that line, you'll laugh. Andy said when he read it and he got to that line, he busted out laughing because he'd heard me say it so much. So, oh, thanks, Philip.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to think about. I'm actually going to process my thoughts and actually put it in a ranking video. Spoiler alert: Bone Hunters wins, but everything else, I should really think about where I put them.
That would be interesting. I wonder. I'll have to see if I can guess how you'd rank them. Yeah. Hob 2022. We said that about this year though too, Charmaine, didn't we? We said
we were supposed to start reading. We were supposed to start reading Hob in March, wasn't it?
Yes, we were supposed to start it in March, and it was funny because like up until like a week before I was supposed to start the Realm of the Elderlings, I was so certain I was going to, and then once it got closer, I was like, I just can't do it right now. I just felt overwhelmed. I just felt overwhelmed.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get at least do Realm of the Elderlings. No, Farseer trilogy.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I'm really excited to get into that series though. I'm so excited to get into Robin Hobb. I feel like I need to be part of that conversation for sure.
Yeah, same. I just want to be part of any wider conversation, because I read a bunch of stuff that, like, I just need to read something that the general public is talking about, so I can not be the kid being like, oh, look at them inside.
I feel that way. I feel like the little kid inside too with with Hobb and with Abercrombie. It's like, oh, I want to, because I'm
100%.
I've read some Abercrombie, but I haven't gotten as far as everybody else with Wisdom of Crowds. So
to quote Eliza Hamilton, let me be part of the narrative.
Yes.
Uri, she has plenty of time to.
What did I miss?
Look at Uri's. She has plenty of time to pick up Winds of Strife.
Oh yeah. Yes, that's the deal I made with Uri, that I have to read Winds of Strife before King Killer 3. So I could do that. I could definitely do that.
That poor man does not want to write that book. He just tweeted like last week, like can I just release the third book as a series of bullet points? He does not want to write that. So I think we're safe of having plenty of time.
Yeah.
Oh, that poor man.
Yeah, that's too bad. Well, it was. I'm fine with that. I'm still glad that I read the first two. I know a lot of people are avoiding them because they don't want to start a series that is left hanging like that. But I still think it was, I still enjoyed my time reading those books.
I strongly recommend reading Name of the Wind. I think Name of the Wind serves fine. I don't think you're necessarily put out of anything if you don't continue with Wise Man's Fear. I think Wise Man's Fear, I feel more put out having read that and not having a third book than I would have felt if I had just stopped after Name of the Wind. I think Name of the Wind is certainly worth a read for sure. But you know, I have a special place in my heart for those because Christina made me read Name of the Wind, and that's what got me back into reading fantasy after 10 years of not reading fantasy. So I saw that, Matt. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Read them.
I love Name of the Wind. I thought Wise Man's Fear, it did get, I think it was, I don't know. It was good. It wasn't as good for me.
Correct.
It wasn't as good for me. I know my husband loved The Name of the Wind, and then when he read The Wise Man's Fear, and he just got confused. He said, "What? Why?"
It does not feel like, it does not feel very intentional. Wise Man's Fear. It feels like, it just does not feel to me like it is like it was going anywhere the way that Name of the Wind did. But I like it. And I think if it wasn't the second book after Name of the Wind, I'd like it way more. But it's
it's interesting though, because by the time I finished The Name of the Wind, by the time I finished Wise Man's Fear, I felt like I knew Kvothe, that character, so well that I actually dreamed about him. Dreamed that I saw him and that I talked to him and interact, and he was even playing his instrument and everything. It was weird. I've never had that happen before, where I've actually dreamed of a book character. That has to say something.
I think Rothfuss writes about music exceptionally. I think he's one of the best writing about music and how it feels to the players and the audience and stuff like that. That's one of the reasons my wife loved it so much and why she recommended it, is because of his descriptions of music. Yeah,
that's always great to hear Christina's opinions. I loved the magic of the Kingdom of Back review. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
That was so fun. I read that book too, and it was fun. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's see. Wow, 3 times. There are some big fans out there.
Yeah. Yes, Kate. Yeah.
That's what got my husband into reading fantasy, or back into reading fantasy.
Yeah.
He mostly reads nonfiction, but yeah, that book was it's been very inspiring for a lot of people.
Yeah. Kate, I saw that, and I think he's supposed to be playing Quoth's dad, but that show's never going to happen. So this is a moot point.
Yeah. Okay. And so, wait, when are you finishing the Mistborn trilogy?
Next month.
Okay, yeah. I know you said that. You were talking about that in a recent video.
I don't know why I haven't finished it. I just need to. It may be my inner hipster that's like, I'm not going to be a Sanderson fanboy. But I don't. It's really just because I had started a whole bunch of stuff and I wasn't buddy reading it with anybody. So, but I need to finish it because I started Mistborn last November. It has been a full year. 11 months since I started my Mistborn journey. So it's ridiculous that it's taken me a year to read 3 books. It's dumb. Yeah. So yeah, I will be reading Hero of Ages next month, come hell or high water.
Yeah.
And then I'm starting Stormlight in January, hopefully. And I'm going to take 3 months for each book so that I can actually read something else. At least I'm going to try.
Yeah. Wow. I'm curious to hear what you'll think about those books for sure.
Have you read Stormlight?
Yeah.
Do you like Stormlight?
I really loved The Way of Kings.
Yeah.
I really loved that book when I read it, and I read them back to back. So I read each one, like one a month for a few months there, starting last summer. And then what happened for me personally, I'm so the wrong person to talk to about Sanderson, because I, like, around November, December, remember in November last year when I guess November is just a month for this. It was like The Burning God and The Fires of Vengeance, the second book to the Rage of Dragons series, and the Rhythm of War all came out like the same, like within a week of each other or something. And so I just, for whatever reason, got so hyped, and I was like, I have to read everything. Like as soon as it comes out. And I didn't even read. Sorry, my husband's like using some kind of tool in the back, if you can hear that. But I didn't even read Rhythm of War exactly when it came out. But what I did was I felt like as soon as I was leading up to it, I was so excited for it. And then I found out about all these novellas that you have to read. You have to read this novella and that novella. I can't remember, like Head Dancer and Dawn Shard. You have to read all of these. And so I read those, and I read this other sci-fi book he came out with, the original. And then I read Rhythm of War, and it was all like within a month period or a month and a half.
It's too much.
It was too much Sanderson for me.
That's too
And
much.
I got so burned out.
Oh, I get it.
And I think for me, this is like my own personal thoughts on this, but I got really fatigued on the hard magic system.
Yeah.
And that's a signature thing of Sanderson's.
Yeah.
So if you're not, that's kind of more on me than it is on Sanderson. I didn't like the fact that we were in the middle of characters struggling with certain battles and things, and suddenly the character's just thinking about how this magic works.
Yeah.
Like, why are you thinking about that when this is happening?
Yeah.
And I also felt as though that last book, structure-wise, you'll notice that the Stormlight books all follow the same exact structure. Like you have the prologue, you have these interludes, and you have these flashbacks of one specific character. And I think it worked pretty well. It worked okay for the first book. And then after that, I felt like I would have liked him to have departed from having to have that same exact structure for every book.
Yeah.
So it was a personal preference thing more than anything, and just burning myself out reading too much of one author at one time.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. Yeah, that's why I'm gonna space it out, and I may not even get to. I'm not in a rush, but the problem is that I would like to be part of the conversation by the time the new one comes out. So I really have 2 years to catch up on all that stuff, because it's not gonna be out till November of 23. So
what I would say too is don't pressure yourself to read it fast, and don't pressure yourself. Like, I guess I'm just offering advice I wish I had taken for myself, is don't pressure yourself to have to read everything in the Cosmere at the right time.
100%.
I don't know. That's just me though. I am happy for fans though, if that's what the way they want to enjoy a series, and it builds their excitement and enjoyment of it. I'm not trying to take that away from anybody. I just know for me it was a little bit overkill.
Not gonna lie, I'm actually more excited on my quest for Flintlock Fantasy to read Mistborn Era 2. That's actually kind of what I'm most excited about, is to bust into that kind of to those books. Who a lot of people don't like it because it's Mistborn Era 2 and they like Mistborn Era 1 way better, but most people have told me that I'm probably really gonna like them.
You probably will. I didn't care for them as much, and mostly just because I felt like the characters were a little flat for me.
You really have read all the Sanderson.
Yeah, I've read a lot of Sanderson. I probably read more Sanderson than any other author.
Is there any Sanderson you haven't read?
Yeah, I haven't read the Steelheart books, and
have you read Elantris?
And I haven't read Elantris. Yeah, that's it. But yeah, I've read a lot of, and I haven't read his White Sands. He's written a lot. There's a lot I haven't read actually.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. I think I got fatigued on Sanderson. So
I am having a blast finding crap that not everyone in the world is talking about, and being able to, because if let's say I love Stormlight Archive, that's fine. Like, I'll join the hundreds of thousands of voices shouting about how great the Stormlight Archive is, and that's fine. Like, that's fine. I just, like with my Mistborn book videos, I try to find something that I can add to the conversation, because otherwise I'm just saying the same thing that thousands of other people have said the exact same way. It's what I just like it so much more, finding these books that not everyone has already had an opinion on, because
it's funny you say that, because I am actually a little scared that by the time I get to the Long Price Quartet, everybody will have read it and had something to say, and I'm not going to have anything original to say about him.
No, definitely not.
Dark Corner of BookTube, everybody's reading them now. I'm like, I'm going to be the last. I'm not going to have anything important.
No, there's plenty of people who haven't read it. Then you will just help us find those people who haven't read it, and you can help us push it on them.
That's true. But you know what? You're right. And actually, I think some of the best fantasy is going to be fantasy that it's not like you've read one book or watched one review and you've watched them all. Not that that's ever true about any fantasy, but I think we always get paranoid about that. Like, I won't have anything to contribute to the conversation, when in fact we really, I don't know. We do. I know for a fact. I mean, it's obvious that everybody is very excited to see what you are going to say. For example, about Well of the Set, or what is it? The last book,
Hero of Ages.
The Hero of Ages. And I'm still even though I'm like a bit burned out on Sanderson, I'm still very excited to hear what you're going to say, and about the Stormlight books. I'm very excited to hear your thoughts on all of those. Anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just interesting.
See, look, you can read them with Charmaine, because she won't have read them by the time you get to
Yay,
them.
Charmaine! All right, that'd be fantastic. Yeah, because I really feel like, man, I'm gonna be the last one. Same with the Sunland books too.
Those are excellent also.
Oh, I love the song. Yeah, you know, I was thinking about A Song of Ice and Fire when you were talking earlier about plot and character.
Yeah.
Like, that's something I thought Martin was just a master of.
Martin
Because
was
I
exceptional.
was equally as obsessed with the plot as I was with characters in that series.
100%. I mean, everyone needs to understand he's not going to write his last one either. And it's okay. Like, I mean, it's okay. It's just they don't. If I was Martin, I wouldn't want to write book 6 either, because the shows come out, and you know, like, it's like when I talk about a book, I try not to talk about a book after I finished it until I've reviewed it, because once I've talked about it, like, all my thoughts are out, and it's like, oh, I gotta go say my thoughts again. Like, I don't want to do it again. So I imagine if I was Martin, I'd be like, yeah, they put it on TV, cool, that's fine. And then just, you know, you've got all these other things that are fresher and probably more interesting, you know, like, he wants to go do those things. It's just, I mean, it's frustrating as someone who followed all of the books. Like, when did Storm of Swords come out? I don't know if I was waiting for book 4 or waiting for book 3. Storm of Swords was released in, thank you for not telling me that, 2000. Yeah, I was waiting for Storm of Swords. My friends and I we had read Game of Thrones, Clash of Kings. We're waiting for Storm of Swords. It came out. We read it. Then we waited for Feast of Crows, however long we waited for that. And then we waited for Dance of Dragons in was it 08, 12, 2012, 2008. Yeah. Right? 2008? I don't know. But then, you know, and then we've been waiting. And it's just like, I've read them so many times. Every time there's going to new one come out, I read them. And it's just like, I don't care anymore. Like, I just don't care anymore. So it's frustrating. It is frustrating that I did that 2011. So it's frustrating that I never got that I'm not going to get to finish them, but I do not regret having read them. I think Storm of Swords is a fantastic book. Honestly.
I loved those books. I know everybody says, you know, that the first 3 are the best, and then
I feel that way too, but
I loved all 5 of them so much. I really want to reread them though, because I haven't read them in like a decade. So
if there is actually a release date for the 6th book, I may actually go ahead and do myself a reread. Like, I don't even own these books anymore. That's how long it's been. Like, they didn't survive my purge and many of my moves, so I don't even own them anymore. So I would have to rebuy them.
I've never owned. Actually, I own, I think, an old mass market paperback of Game of Thrones. But other than that, I don't own any of them. Yeah, I'm really excited to reread those at some point. I know people are doing that. Like, Jimmy said that he was doing that.
Yeah, he's doing a reread.
Yeah, with Alex and with Leanne. Yeah. I wish I could join that. That would be so fun to reread those books. But yeah, that's not going to happen for a while anyway. And it's got to be so hard for Martin too. I feel for him though too, because man, how do you finish something like that? There are so many threads that are open. It's really hard. And then plus expectations, like you said, of fans. Like, the expectations must be insane for how high the payoff needs to be at the very end. And then lastly, I think it's also scary to finish something like that, because it's been like, that's defined you for that long. I kind of got a sense of that from listening to Abercrombie in that interview, because he talked about how he sort of feels like a fan does after they finish a series, kind of like a bit of a bittersweet kind of sadness. Of something. And that's something I think that doesn't get talked about a lot. But I mean, you've been in musicals before. I don't know if you could, or in theater before, but I don't know if you ever could relate to that. But I know that I experienced this, and I saw other people experience this. Like, when a show is over, there'd be a high with the finale, but then after a show is over, there's almost like a little bit of like a almost like a postpartum kind of.
Yeah, the show Hangover. Yeah,
Yeah.
where everybody's all depressed and stuff. Yeah. No.
So I bet anything that's also, there's probably some protective thing of like being afraid of even succeeding, of completely succeeding, because then you kind of have to deal with that sort of depression afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. Cool. Closing nights. Yes, they're so sad. Awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that just about wraps up everything. Yeah. And
This was a blast.
yes, this was so much fun.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Alan, for joining me. This was so fun. I didn't even, I mean, I was having a little bit of anxiety about the live show part and managing comments and stuff like that. But I had no anxiety talking to you because I thought I could easily talk to Alan. And I think that's, you know, your channel has just been such an inspiration for me. Like I said, ever since I discovered your channel, I was just like, I was an instant fan, just such an instant fan. And like, that's the cool thing about Alan, and I think everybody can agree in the comments, is that as much as you talk about being kind of like like loving books for the revolutionary aspects and for the people, you are like that in BookTube too. You're like a booktuber who is for the people.
That's right. That's right.
Just like, you're not like too big for, even though you are a big channel and you're big to us, like you don't act like you're too big for us, and I just appreciate that.
Definitely not. Like this, the smaller corner of BookTube is like where it's at. Like I remember being, you know, I'm still a small channel. Like Philip Dr. has outgrown us. I hope he's not here, so he didn't hear me say that. He can't defend himself. But you know, I'm still small in the scheme of things. But I remember what it was like to be, you know, starting out, trying to get that first you know, first 1,000 subscribers, you know, gunning for that or whatever. And so I'm adding new sub 1K channels every day. And I try so hard to engage and watch a ton of BookTube. It is something that I can do while I'm playing video games. So I try to combine those two things just because, you know, I know how hard it is to start a freaking channel and, you know, get that engagement and the community and, you know, wanting to put eyes on the channel and stuff. So I hope, like, I hope that if I ever am a bigger channel or whatever, that the sense of community would not be lost, because then it doesn't sound like fun at all. Like I'm the revolutionary.
Yeah, you are the revolutionary. Like you really do live that on BookTube. Like you really
I hate that. So
BookTube revolutionary thing. And I agree with you too. I mean, that's kind of funny. Like I know that before I had a channel, like before I got involved in the book community really, and I was just kind of like a BookTube lurker, my husband kind of made fun of me a bit because he said, you seem to love following like these smaller channels. And I said, well, yeah, because it's not really about, you know, having the biggest channel. It's about, I don't know, there's so much more to it than that. And it really is a community like thing. So
And I don't think everybody's like this, but I do think that the larger you get, the pressure to conform is greater, because, you know, you have a wider audience and you like, there's just more and more people. And so I think it could become harder to stray away from the popular opinion. You know, if that was the case, I mean, I don't know anybody that goes through that or whatever, but I do think that would be harder with more eyes to, you know, to like just think, how much harder would it be to trash Sanderson if I had 100,000 subscribers than, you know, 5,800 or whatever? Like it would be, I think the temptation to like Sanderson would be much, much greater than if you're small. If you're small, you know, whatever.
Well, I still feel uncomfortable even just saying what I did. A little bit.
It's always dangerous because his fans are legion.
He has a book called Legion, actually.
It's about his fans. It's about his fans.
And I haven't read it, but yeah, I think that's a really good point too. And I've actually wondered about that too. If maybe having kind of slower, steady growth as a channel might be sometimes more ideal in a way than people skyrocket.
I completely agree with that, because I think if you were having to work slowly to build your subscriber base, I think that is when you're small, that is the time you are figuring out who you are as a booktuber, the kind of stuff you like to do as a booktuber, and you can like play around with it, experiment, and you only have a few eyes on the channel. Like, so, and the people watching it are people who like that stuff. You know what I mean? And so I think you can kind of develop your brand or identity while you're doing that, rather than if you jump right away. Like, let's say you've been on BookTube for 2 weeks or even a month, and you get a big shout out or a big like link, and then all of a sudden you're at 2K and you've been on BookTube a month. That's got to be terrifying.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden you have all these new eyes and you haven't really even discovered, who you are on BookTube yet. And so I think that can lead to some burnout or some, anxiety or something. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally think that makes sense. Absolutely. And it's just weird because you don't really realize that there's sort of like an art to sort of learning your voice or learning who you are as a booktuber until you actually start that journey. At least that's what it's been for me. And that kind of surprised me too. It's like, oh, wow, this is like a journey to kind of figure myself out here.
Yeah. And it's always been important for me because the internet is such a terrible, terrible place to foster a community that isn't like that. And like, I know, like, I'm so proud of like the community on my Discord because everyone, like, there's no drama there. Like, everyone is super kind, super supportive of each other. People can dislike and disagree with, like, people actually disagree and dislike, and no one's hurting anybody's feelings. They're just like, yeah, I hate that book. When you have people like me with really loud, unpopular opinions, and then people like Klaus, same thing. But everyone has no problem being like, Alan, that book's terrible. It's like, okay, that's fine. Same thing with Klaus. Like, Klaus, everyone hates Game of Kings. You're the only one that likes it, Klaus. No one's feelings are hurt. Like, it was super important to me to have that kind of community online where people can not be stressed out and not worry about people being huge douchebags. Because as we've seen, like, look at the comments on Abby's Dune video.
I know, and actually, I totally agree with that. That was so uncalled for. Like, I love Dune. Dune is one of my favorite books of all time. She did not deserve that.
No,
did not deserve that.
And what these people don't understand, these mega fans, because they do it, and there's some in every fandom, just some are more vocal than others, is they are not assisting anybody wanting to read Dune. They are hurting the cause of their thing, because guess what? After that, I want to read Dune less now. I have moved Dune because I don't want to deal with that crap either. And they do not understand that they're not doing a service to this thing that they love. They are making people turn away from it because everyone's afraid of having the unpopular opinion. And I don't, like I said earlier in this thing, I don't know why people have to be douchebags.
Yeah.
Like, no one's forcing them to act that way.
Well, and to speak to your point about just the awesomeness of our corner of BookTube, even though there are people like trolls who were really, really mean to Abby, and it was just horrible. I saw some of the comments that she took down, I think. But one of the things though that I want to point out though is that she was part of a wonderful discussion over on Joanna Sousa's channel with some other with people like Sarah Reed who loved it, and Joanna who gave it 3 stars, and they all had different opinions about it. And they were so respectful of one another. And that's nobody talked to Abby or talked down to Abby because she felt differently. And they listened to what she had to say. I just really think that inspired me so much.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
That discussion was wonderful. And I really appreciated that. I felt very, very honored to have the Dune discussion on my channel that I did with Mike and Philip. But I loved it, and it was wonderful because the 4 of us loved the book. It would have been fine, like, if Sarah had hated it. I would have been fine with that. But I love that we all loved it. It was great to have a gush video. But I had to let Joanna Sousa know that I really appreciated that she had that discussion on her channel, because it's meaningful to have diverse opinions. And be able to express those in such a supportive, kind, friendly way. And that's something that I really love about, like I said, this corner of BookTube.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the thing is, like, it's my brand and my shtick to get really worked up about people hating the stuff that I like. But every person understands that I'm not actually mad at them. That I'm just stunned by such terrible opinions. But no, it's just like I get it, and I don't know. My identity is not wrapped up in greatcoats, Sinless Ends, long press quartet, even the City Watch. That's not my identity. Like, if Philip ends up not liking the City Watch, or someone else like doesn't like Guards, or even if someone's like, I hate Captain Vimes, I'm like, okay. I mean, that would make me sad, but my identity is not wrapped up in these fictional characters. So I don't feel like I'm under assault and I need to defend and be rude to people for their opinion. It's just weird. The internet's a weird place, Joanna.
Yeah.
Weird place.
Yeah. And I totally don't doubt you on that, by the way. I don't doubt that at all. But I am really looking forward to that live show. I think that's going to be so much fun.
It's going to be so exciting. So I'm so excited to talk to Philip about Discworld.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So, all right. Well, thank you again, everyone, so much for joining us. And thank you again, Alan. I know I keep on saying goodbyes for an hour now, but really to wrap this up. So
my wife's family takes forever to say bye. So
so does my family. My family takes eons to say goodbye to.
Well, thank you so much, Joanna. This has been a blast.
Yes.
Comments. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.